The other two men were afraid to expose themselves, so they criticized Gu Ning. Miss Mengqi has her own wine glass, so why do you have to force her to use another one? Exactly, even though you're Executive Li's friend. We'll call the security guards if you don't stop. Very well, please call the security guards right now. I think you better call the police too. Gu Ning beamed and didn't seem frightened at all. You. Their faces changed again. If they call the police, they could be exposed. And now they were certain that this young girl had to know something. The question was how? Lu Jingyu didn't miss any detail. And he realized that they probably did something together behind his back. Are you going to drink it or not? Gu Ning stared at Chan Mingqi coldly. Chan Mingqi was mad as well as terrified, and failed to say a word. You don't want to drink it by yourself? Let me help you then.
Gu Ning sneered.
Before Chan Mingqi could react, Gu Ning forced her mouth open wide and poured the drink straight down her throat. The wine glass in Chan Mingqi's hand smashed into pieces on the ground, but she was too terrified to care about that. However, she resisted in vain, and the drink was in her stomach now. The rest of the people were all shocked, but it was too late to stop it. Gu Ning let Chan Mingqi go afterwards, and the latter almost choked to death trying to get the drink out. You! Chan Mingqi glared at Gu Ning, but she could do nothing now. Within seconds, Chan Mingqi fainted, falling on the sofa. The other two men were frightened and didn't dare to utter a word. Who did this? Lu Jingyu was furious. A man immediately explained. Executive Lu, it has nothing to do with us. It was Chan Mingqi's idea. Exactly. Chan Mingqi did it herself, and we know nothing about it at all. We just wanted to see what she was going to do, so we stayed quiet. Please forgive us. Another man begged. Although they had cooperation with Lu Jingyu, they were barely comparable to him. If Lu Jingyu ended their deal, their company could lose a fortune. Even Chan Mingqi's friend claimed that it was Chan Mingqi's own idea. Then you should know why she did it.
Gu Ning questioned.
In fact, she already knew the answer from Chan Mingqi's attitude towards Lu Jingyu. She liked Lu Jingyu, but Lu Jingyu loved Qian. Thus Chan Mingqi planned to drug Lu Jingyu and sleep with him. Gu Ning was right. She liked Executive Lu, but Executive Lu doesn't like her, so she planned to sleep with Executive Lu and get pregnant. In that case, Executive Lu would be hers, Chan Mingqi's female friend said. There was dense hatred in Lu Jingyu's eyes. He knew that Chan Mingqi liked him, but he had already told her that he loved Qian. Chan Mingqi never mentioned it again, and he had thought that she had given up on him. However, to his astonishment, she was scheming behind his back. If it hadn't been for Gu Ning, he would have been trapped. If he had been trapped, he would feel disgusted, and Qian probably wouldn't give him any hope. Thinking of that, Lu Jingyu was increasingly mad. His cold sight like sharp knife glanced over the two men. Since she wants a man, then you two have to keep her company tonight. If you dare to disobey my order, I'll end the deal with your company at once.
Les enjeux wasn't weak.
Whoever tried to trap him, he would pay the person back, and it didn't matter if he or she succeeded or not. Although it was Chan Mingqi who had put the drug into his drink, the two men hid the truth, which made them accomplices, so long shouting naturally wouldn't let them get away with it. The two men were terrified and answered immediately, "Yes, sir." They didn't dare to resist at all now, unless they wanted to lose their jobs. Besides, men seldom refused to sleep with a beautiful woman, especially those two. Chan Mingqi was pretty and sexy. They had wanted her for a long time, but Chan Mingqi disliked them. In addition, Chan Mingqi was from a rich family, so they didn't dare to use force. Since Lu Jingyu ordered them to do so now, they were more than willing to do it. After that, Lu Jingyu left with Gu Ning. "Miss Gu, thank you so much for helping me. Otherwise, I could have been trapped already, but could you please tell me how you found out?" "I just left for a minute," Lu Jingyu said to Gu Ning. Gu Ning replied, "I was sitting in the private room right across from yours, and I accidentally saw you sitting with Chan Mingqi, so I was curious. I met Chan Mingqi in a shopping mall with Qian last week, and I know about your relationship. Thus I wondered why you two were together. Unexpectedly, when you went out, She immediately put white powder into your wine glass. Although I wasn't sure what it was, it would be a bad thing if you were drugged. Therefore I ran to you without delay. Luckily I arrived on time. Thinking of what had just happened, Lu Zhengyu still felt mad. But he was surprised by Gu Ning's good sight. You could see me from the other side? Your sight is so unbelievable. There was a distance of 10 meters at least between the two rooms. Yeah, my sight is much better than that of a normal person's. Gu Ning laughed. Oh, you must be here with your friends, right? Lu Zhengyu asked. Yes, do you want to come and join us? And Yi is with us too, Gu Ning invited. And Ian and Qian were cousins, so Lu Zhengyu was familiar with him. No thanks. I'm not in the mood now, Lu Zhengyu declined. Well, it's fine, Gu Ning didn't insist. And please don't tell Qian about this. I don't want to worry her, Lu Zhengyu said. Sure, Gu Ning replied. After that, Lu Zhengyu left and Gu Ning went back to her private room. Gu Ning continued to play with her friends, and Leng Xiaoting had been focusing on her all the time, so he didn't ask anything. Lu Zhengyu went downstairs to the counter. He planned to order something for Gu Ning, but found out that Gu Ning had won the top prize and had free food as well as drinks tonight. Lu Zhengyu was surprised by Gu Ning's good luck. The two men who were with Chen Mengqi didn't stay in the private room for a long time. One of them went to book a room, and the other one pulled Chen Mengqi into the room afterwards. This was the Qing gang's place and nobody would care about that. They warned Chen Mengqi's female friend to shut her mouth before they let her go. Gu Ning and her friends left the clubhouse when it was almost 12 a.m. Leng Xiaoting and Gu Ning were responsible for sending Chu Peihan and Yu Mixi home, while the boys took a taxi. It was the first time that Gu Ning had been to Yu Mixi's home. Her home wasn't far away, but located in an old living area. There was a small breakfast store at the entrance of the living area, which belonged to Yu Mixi's family. The small breakfast store was actually profitable. If they hadn't used so much of their savings to try to cure Yu Mixi mother's disease, they would have already bought a new house. Yu Mixi and his father were still hopeful that Yu Mixi's mother could be fully recovered one day, and they valued family greatly above a house. Luckily, with the help of Gu Ning's power, Yu Mixi's mother was already fully recovered. She was now even healthier than normal people, and was able to work right away. Yu Mixi believed that her family would live a better and better life. Gu Ning would sometimes put her power into Gu Man and her other family, so that they all were healthy and they looked much younger now. On the way, Leng Xiaoting drove Gu Ning back to Fenghua Luxury Mansion. He intentionally drove at a low speed, because he didn't want to be apart from Gu Ning. He was leaving for City G tomorrow, and didn't know when he would be back. Gu Ning had the same feeling as Leng Xiaoting, but she also knew that both of them needed to work. Absence only made the heart grow fonder, and they were both working hard to build a better future. Even then, Gu Ning still couldn't help missing him before they were even apart. In the inn, they arrived at Zone G in Fenghua Luxury Mansion. Gu Ning looked to Leng Xiaoting with a resigned smile on her face. I know you don't want to leave, I don't either, but we all have our own things to deal with. It's unavoidable that we'll be apart once in a while for a short time. You must take good care of yourself. I'll miss you.
En, Leng Xiaoting answered.
Gu Ning felt upset. All of a sudden, Leng Xiaoting approached Gu Ning, kissing her soft lips with great force, like a hungry monster finally getting delicious food. Gu Ning understood that he was venting his reluctance to leave her. Thus, even though it hurt, she didn't utter a word and kissed him back. Leng Xiaoting was proud of his self-control in the past, but now he totally gave it up before Gu Ning. Gu Ning also had the same feelings. Therefore, Gu Ning couldn't deny that she wanted more than just a kiss, but her reason stopped her from doing so. Leng Xiaoting didn't let her go until they were both out of breath. Seeing Gu Ning's red swollen lips and flushed cheeks, Leng Xiaoting was even more unwilling to leave her. He almost pressed her to him again, but he controlled himself because he knew that it wasn't the right time. Ning Ning, does it hurt? Leng Xiaoting touched Gu Ning's lips and felt a little guilty. A little, Gu Ning answered. Hearing that, Leng Xiaoting was slightly embarrassed and did nothing further. After a while, the two finally separated. The two men had made love to Chan Mengqi for an entire night. When she woke up the next day, she was all black and blue and was alone. The two men were already gone. Although Chan Mengqi had accidentally drugged herself, she knew what had happened before she had passed out and what had happened to her now. She immediately burst into tears. She hated them so much. Why they had done that to her? She knew that it was her fault for trying to scheme against Lu Zhengyu, but it was only because she loved him deeply. Since he was fine, why did he have to humiliate her? Chan Mengqi had several ex-boyfriends and was not a virgin, but this time she felt quite disgusted. It was the most humiliating night that she had even been through. She set herself to get revenge in the future. It was impossible for her to approach Lu Zhengyu after this in the future. However, since she couldn't win Lu Zhengyu, she wouldn't let Qian be with him either. And since Lu Zhengyu humiliated her like this, she would let Qian taste the same feelings. Thinking of that, Chan Mengqi stopped crying. Her face looked horrible with tear marks and her eyes were full of hatred now. Leng Xiaoting left at 9 a.m. the next morning. Gu Ning didn't send him off and he left alone, but they had met earlier when Leng Xiaoting drove Gu Ning to her school. They were unwilling to leave each other even though they should be apart. If they hadn't been in public, they would have had a long kiss once more. When Gu Ning came to the playground, her friends had already finished the morning training and were having a rest. It was the first time that Gu Ning had been late, so Chu Peihan and others immediately made fun of her. "Boss, it's so unusual that you're so late." Hao Ran said. "Boss's boyfriend is leaving today, and they must seize every second to be together." Chu Peihan made eyes at Gu Ning. "Well, poor us. We're all single and could only run to spend the time." Qin Zixuan sighed. "I think that freedom is much more precious than love," Muka said, as if he would choose freedom over love. "Exactly, it's free being single. I don't like being in a serious relationship," Chu Peihan said. All of a sudden, an idea dawned on Chu Peihan. She asked Gu Ning, "Tell us, to what extent have you and our brother-in-law's relationship developed? Holding hands, kissing, or?" Chu Peihan didn't continue, but it was clear what she was going to say. Gu Ning felt a little uneasy. She didn't think that it was appropriate to tell them that, but she didn't want them to get her wrong, so she said, "We just kissed." "How did it feel?" Chu Peihan asked with curiosity. "Find a man and try it yourself."
Gu Ning said.
"I won't do that," Chu Peihan said. When it was almost 12 p.m., Gu Ning received a message from Leng Xiaoting. He was in the capital now. Zhou Zhenghong called Gu Ning at noon. He told her that there had been a little trouble that happened in Jade Beauty Jewelry Store, but that he had already solved it. A woman came to their store this morning and claimed that she had bought a fake jade bracelet in Jade Beauty Jewelry, but she forgot that all the jewelry sold in Jade Beauty Jewelry Store had a unique mark on it. Thus Zhou Zhenghong immediately knew that the woman was lying. The woman later admitted that it was Xiaoping who sent her. Zhou Zhenghong wasn't sure whether Xiaoping was really behind it, and he needed time to find out the truth. Although there was a long-standing grudge between Xiaoping and him, it was possible that other jewelry businessmen used Xiaoping's name to cause him trouble. Therefore, he called the police and handed the woman to them. Jade Beauty Jewelry Store was working well, so Gu Ning wasn't worried about it. Also, the exams were around the corner. Gu Ning needed to pay more attention to studying now in order to keep her top position in the grade, so that she could easily ask for a leave in the future. She was afraid that she would frequently be absent from school the next semester. Besides, those who hated Gu Ning all suddenly stayed quiet. It was probably because of what had happened to Gu Xiaoxiao and Chen Ziao. Qin Zheng seldom met Gu Ning, but he wanted to talk to her every time he saw her. However, Gu Ning was always with Hao Ran and the others, so he didn't dare to go near. Zhang Yiming and Fu Mingliang also stopped bad-mouthing Gu Ning. They were acting like complete strangers now. Gu Ning flew to City D that weekend to give Kay the treatment. Gu Ning cured him completely this time, because she would be busy during the vacation after the exams, and she wouldn't have time to go to City D again. After the treatment, Kay was already able to walk, and he didn't care that Gu Ning had told him that he needed to get the treatment 3 times. He could walk now, and there was no reason for him not to believe Gu Ning. Kay had also gotten a bunch of Hongyun Real Estate's dirty secrets for Gu Ning. To Gu Ning's surprise, Hongyun Real Estate had done a lot of illegal things, like bribery of government officials, forced demolitions without compensation, tax evasion of nearly 500 million yuan, construction work cuts and so forth. Besides, two important officials were involved. They were the Vice Mayor Lu Shirkuan and the Director of the Roads and Traffic Authority, Wei Qingguan. The materials that Kay handed to Gu Ning was evidence of their crimes. They had both accepted bribery in regards to many properties, and each of them even had two mistresses. Kay also sent Gu Ning the addresses and amorous photos of their mistresses. What shocked Gu Ning the most was that they were involved in a homicide too. Once the materials were exposed, Lu Shirkuan and Wei Qingguan would be thrown into jail without a doubt. In that case, if Gu Ning wanted to get revenge on Hongyun, Lu Shirkuan and Wei Qingguan would be affected as well. It wasn't an easy thing for Gu Ning, who was just a common citizen, to unseat them. Lu Shirkuan had to have the support from someone more influential. If Gu Ning reported it according to the procedure, she would be stopped before she even began. It wasn't a small deal that she could easily handle. Thus, the most efficient way was to hand the evidence to a powerful man who was able and willing to unseat Lu Shirkuan. The best choice had to be Yan Zhenglin. Yan Zhenglin and Lu Shirkuan served for two different groups in politics, and they were more than willing to unseat each other. Lu Shirkuan had been hiding his dirty secrets really well, so Yan Zhenglin failed to get any solid proof on him. Gu Ning made it a long-term plan. She planned to acquire Hongyun Real Estate and expand Shanghua Real Estate by doing so in the future. The registered value of the assets of Hongyun Real Estate was about 5 billion yuan, excluding liquid funds and other things. Among them were immovable property, which included hotels and shopping malls, which were worth about 3 billion yuan. Once their dirty secrets were exposed, its stock price would dramatically decrease and no other companies or groups would be willing to cooperate with it. Its final value would be 2 billion yuan at the most. A project of 2 billion yuan was a huge deal to Gu Ning right now, and she couldn't afford it. Therefore, she planned to discuss with Yan Zhenglin about Hongyun Real Estate after she came back from Province Y. On the way from the airport to Fenghua Luxury Mansion after Gu Ning flew back to City F, a picture flashed before Gu Ning's eyes. In an abandoned warehouse, several men surrounded An Qian and were about to assault her sexually. An Qian struggled and shouted, but no one helped her. On the other side, Chen Mengqi laughed evilly and seemed satisfied. Gu Ning sensed that something had to be wrong. Chen Mengqi was going to revenge herself on An Qian. Gu Ning knew the location of the warehouse from the picture, and she immediately told the taxi driver to change the direction and go there. Luckily, the warehouse wasn't far away, but it took at least 5 minutes to get there from the airport. At the same time, a car stopped outside of an abandoned warehouse. The door was pushed open and 4 men jumped out of it. One of them carried An Qian, who was obviously unconscious, from the car, walking into the warehouse and closed its gate. In the warehouse, Chen Mengqi was already waiting for them. She looked evil and was pleased when they brought An Qian inside. Chen Mengqi walked over to An Qian, who was put on the ground. She looked at An Qian condescendingly. "Wake her up. I want her to feel this happening while she is conscious." Without delay, a man opened a bottle of water, pouring it straight on An Qian's face. Before long, An Qian reacted. When An Qian finally regained consciousness and saw the 4 men with Chen Mengqi, she was astonished and scared. "What are you planning to do?" An Qian tried to stand up in vain. Well, of course I'm going to let you taste the feeling of being f***ed by several men together," Chen Mengqi sneered, and her eyes were full of deep hatred. Hearing that, An Qian's face turned pale. She trembled in fear. "Chen Mengqi, that's illegal." "So what? Do you have any proof that shows that we did it?" Chen Mengqi asked snidely. She didn't seem afraid at all. "You, An Qian, don't blame me for this. If you want to blame someone, it's Lu Zhengyu's fault. Although I always disliked you, I never thought of hurting you. If Lu Zhengyu hadn't..." Thinking of what had happened that day, Chen Mengqi's face was distorted in anger. She had schemed behind Lu Zhengyu's back in the first place, but she couldn't accept the result. And Qian was also mad. Chen Mengqi, you know that you deserve it. Although Qian and Lu Zhengyu weren't a couple yet, they were as close as family. If someone hurt Lu Zhengyu, she would feel annoyed too. If it hadn't been for Gu Ning, Lu Zhengyu would have been trapped by Chen Mengqi. Chen Mengqi had just suffered from what she had done. With a loud sound, Chen Mengqi slapped Qian's face. It's you. It's all because of you. If it weren't for you, Lu Zhengyu would have been willing to accept me. Chen Mengqi almost went crazy because of the fact that Lu Zhengyu loved Qian and ignored her. Actually, if it hadn't been for Qian, Lu Zhengyu wouldn't have come back to City F and Chen Mengqi wouldn't have had a chance to meet him. Chen Mengqi took out a camera aiming it at Qian. I'm going to send him the video of you being F***ed by them, and I'm curious whether he will still love you after that. Chen Mengqi went amok now. Chen Mengqi, you can't do that. You can't. And Qian shouted in anger and desperation. I can't? Well, it's not up to you right now. Chen Mengqi smiled with disdain. You can begin now. Then the four men walked towards Qian.
No.
And Qian was extremely terrified. She struggled to stand up but fell down halfway. She had been drugged, so she was out of strength now, and even if she hadn't been drugged, she wasn't able to fight against four bulky men. A man pounced on Qian, dragging her to the ground, and was about to kiss her. Right at this time, a gunshot sounded all of a sudden. They were all scared, and the camera in Chen Mengqi's hand fell down onto the floor. Those men who were ready to rape Qian all stood up by instinct. What the F***ck? Did someone discover us? A man asked in horror. They were just hoodlums and were afraid of being caught. They thought that it had to be the police who had the gun. Let's hide first. Chen Mengqi was disappointed, but she also didn't want to be caught. If she was caught, she would have no chance to get revenge on Qian. There was more than one gate of this warehouse. Thus they immediately ran to the back door. The warehouse was very large, and it took time for them to hide. During that time, Gu Ning got in and caught them before they were able to escape. When Gu Ning arrived outside of this warehouse, she used her jade eyes, and noticed that Qian was already in danger. Thus she pulled out and fired the gun to stop them before she got in. Once Gu Ning dashed into the warehouse, Chen Mengqi and the other men who were about to open the back door unconsciously looked back, and were all astonished to see Gu Ning instead of policemen. Gu Ning didn't waste any time, and ran to them, punching them down within seconds. Gu Ning was in a rage now, so she hit them heavily and without sympathy. One man's legs were both broken, one's arms were dislocated, one's rib was broken in half, and the last one's head was badly injured and he passed out right away. However, all of them were still alive. Gu Ning wouldn't cause herself trouble. As for Chen Mengqi, Gu Ning slapped her continuously before she seized her neck tightly. Chen Mengqi's face turned pale, and she was immediately out of breath, and felt like she was dying. Gu Ning had no intention to kill her, but decided to scare her to death. And Qian, on the other hand, didn't know what was on Gu Ning's mind. She was worried that Gu Ning would be in trouble if Chen Mengqi died, so she interrupted Gu Ning. Ning, let her go. If she's dead, you'll end up in jail. Don't worry. I know what I'm doing, Gu Ning answered. And Qian believed Gu Ning and was relieved. Gu Ning then threw Chen Mengqi to the ground with great force. Chen Mengqi was in agony, but couldn't utter a word. Gu Ning looked down at her and said coldly, Chen Mengqi, you'll pay for what you've done. After that, Gu Ning ignored her and turned back, walking to Qian. Qian, are you all right?
I'm fine.
Thank you so much for arriving on time otherwise. Although Qian was safe now, she was still very afraid. Then Qian asked, puzzled, Oh, was there a gunshot? How did you know that I was here? It wasn't a gunshot. A lighter just exploded. I heard from several passers-by that you were caught by several hoodlums, so I came to help you, Gu Ning lied. Qian didn't doubt it but only felt lucky. If Gu Ning hadn't arrived on time, she would have been ruined already. What do you want to do with them? Gu Ning asked. Qian was the victim, so it was better to let her make the decision. Qian thought for a second, then said, Let's call the police. Qian then called the police station in Lu Zhengyu. Lu Zhengyu was shocked to hear the news. He immediately postponed the meeting he was going to attend and got in his car. He was exceeding the speed limit and even drove ahead when it was still a red light. Even though he knew that Chen was safe now, he couldn't relax before he saw Chen in person. It normally took a dozen minutes to get there, but Lu Zhengyu arrived after only 6 minutes. The second that he saw Chen, Lu Zhengyu clasped her in his arms. It felt so good to have her in his arms at this moment. Miss Gu, I seriously don't know how to thank you enough. You've saved Chen twice and helped me once. If you have any need in the future, please be free to let us know. We'll do whatever we can, Lu Zhengyu said with sincerity. They both knew that Gu Ning didn't lack money, so they didn't offer her a check. Please don't say that. Chen and I are friends. I'm glad to help her, but if I really need anything in the future, I'll turn to you for help, Gu Ning replied. Before long, the police arrived and brought them all to the police station. The camera that Chan Mengqi had used to record was the proof of their crime. But according to the rules, Chen and Gu Ning needed to give their accounts as well. After that, Gu Ning and others went back. In the end, the 4 men in Chan Mengqi were sentenced to prison for 3 years. Gu Ning, meanwhile, had the final exam several days later. She had been the first in her grade in the last monthly test, so she was arranged to write the final exams in the first examination room, in which the top 30 in the grade would write the final exams together. Qin Zheng and Mu Ku were also in the first examination room, and they sat in the same row. Qin Zheng finally had a chance to be near to Gu Ning, but he still had no chance to talk to her, because Mu Ku kept chatting with her before the exam. And Gu Ning handed her paper in within half an hour every time. By the time that Qin Zheng finished his paper and left the classroom, Gu Ning was already with her friends. Everyone knew that Gu Ning handed her paper in much earlier, but it was still shocking to see her doing that. None of them could finish half of the paper within half an hour. After the 3 days of the final exams, it was vacation. Gu Ning's friends proposed to have fun together with Su Anya. They went to have a meal in a fancy hotel before doing karaoke, and then went to have night snacks. Su Anya's birthday was around the corner, and she invited them to join her birthday party. She also told them not to prepare gifts, and that she could help them with formal clothing. Everyone knew that the Su family was one of the super-rich families in City F, and it absolutely wouldn't be a simple birthday party. Many celebrities would attend without doubt. However, it was impossible that Gu Ning and her friends wouldn't prepare gifts. They didn't say goodbye to each other until it was very late that night. They had an early winter vacation this year, and it was 23 days away from the New Year festival, which was to Gu Ning's advantage. Most of her friends had to attend classes even during the winter vacation, but she wouldn't do the same thing, mainly because she didn't have much time for it. She already had a busy schedule set for this winter vacation. She would fly to City G tomorrow afternoon, and stay there for a few days before leaving for Province Y. After that, she planned to go to the capital if time permitted. She would be attending a university in the capital half a year later, so she wanted to find an appropriate piece of land for an office building for her company as soon as possible. No matter how busy she would be, she had to be back in City F 5 days before the New Year festival to shop with Gu Man. Gu Man didn't know what Gu Ning was up to, but she was aware that Gu Ning was occupied by business. Gu Man didn't ask further but reminded Gu Ning to be careful. Jiang Su's store worked well recently. He had only made a single greatly profitable deal till now, but his store was thriving, and also had tens of thousands of yuan in profits in a week. He had just started his business for a short time, so not many people knew his brand. However, once he began to cooperate with Shanghua Real Estate, things were completely different. Although Shanghua Real Estate was a large real estate company in City F, it wasn't big compared to other companies in this industry, and it only had barely 1 billion yuan in assets. Therefore, Shanghua Real Estate focused on City F, and they didn't have many ongoing projects. Thus, Shiri Construction Materials Store was the only construction materials provider of Shanghua. The next day, Gu Ning went to the beauty salon with Gu Man and Gu Qing in the morning. Mrs. Hao and Mrs. Liu came to the saloon too, and they were both excited to see Gu Ning, because they had bought jade jewelry that they had always wanted after Gu Ning's recommendation, and they wanted to thank Gu Ning in person. Many of their friends also went to Jade Beauty Jewelry Store to buy jewelry in City G, and the brand was growing increasingly famous now. It was becoming universally known that many rich women went to City G to buy jewelry in the Jade Beauty Jewelry Store. Nowadays, Jade Beauty Jewelry was the most popular brand in City G. At noon, Gu Ning dined with them again. And then when it was around 2:30 p.m., Gu Ning went to the airport. Gu Ning didn't tell Zhou Zhenghong that she was coming to City G this time, because she didn't want to bother him too often. After she arrived at City G, she took a taxi heading straight to Jade Beauty Jewelry's flagship store, and called Zhou Zhenghong on her way. Zhou Zhenghong was already in the store, so Gu Ning told him she was going to meet him soon. All the saleswomen called Gu Ning Miss Gu when she appeared in the store. Gu Ning had told them to do so in order to hide her real connection with Jade Beauty Jewelry. Gu Ning gave them a smile as response before she went straight to the office. "Boss, why didn't you tell me that you were coming earlier? I could have picked you up," Zhou Zhenghong said the minute he saw Gu Ning. "I'm not a kid, and I can take a taxi myself. I didn't want to bother you," Gu Ning smiled. Although Zhou Zhenghong didn't think of it as bothering him, he listened to Gu Ning. "Oh, these are the accounts of these days. Please have a look." Zhou Zhenghong handed the accounts to Gu Ning. Although Gu Ning was able to scan them within seconds, with Zhou Zhenghong's presence, she intentionally slowed down her reading pace, but in Zhou Zhenghong's eyes, she still finished checking quickly enough. By now Zhou Zhenghong completely believed that Gu Ning wasn't an ordinary girl, so he was used to it already. Jade Beauty Jewelry made huge profits till now. After checking the accounts, Gu Ning suddenly thought of Xiaoping and she asked Zhou Zhenghong, "Uncle Zhou, what has been going on with Xiaoping recently?" Speaking of Xiaoping, Zhou Zhenghong seemed cheerful. "After what happened last time, I hired someone in his company and exposed a scandal that they were secretly replacing jade of high quality with jade of low quality to deceive consumers. Thus less people are willing to buy their jewelry now, and they started losing money. I think they'll close their stores in the near future. We haven't done anything yet, and he already fails." Gu Ning couldn't help laughing out loud. Indeed, Gu Ning didn't have time to deal with Xiaoping yet, and he already failed after Zhou Zhenghong had exposed his dirty secrets. Reputation and honesty were highly important for a business. Xiaoping was notorious for his bad behavior, and he even secretly sold customers low-quality jewelry at a high price. He was doomed to fail. You need be careful these days. If Xiaoping feels that he's cornered, he will probably try to get revenge on you. Please let all the staff be aware of that. We all should be more careful, Gu Ning said. She wasn't worried that Xiaoping would damage Jade Beauty Jewelry, but was concerned that he would probably try to hurt Zhou Zhenghong and his staff. Nothing was more important than lives. Sure, I will, Zhou Zhenghong replied. Gu Ning went back to clean water blue sky later. On the way, Gu Ning suddenly remembered that she hadn't checked on what was happening to Li Zhenjin for a long time. After she arrived at clean water blue sky, Gu Ning went to Yuan Sen's villa to see whether there was any new situations. In the villa, both Yuan Sen and Lin Wensong were inside, but Li Zhenjin and Su Jing were absent. Although it was only 7 p.m., it got dark quickly in the winter, so Gu Ning easily slid into the living room, hiding in a corner. Li Zhenjin said that she has an appointment with Meng from the Qing gang, so she can't come here, Lin Wensong said to Yuan San when he hung up. Gee, Li Zhenjin and Su Jing really know how to play. They're pretty close with the Qing gang now. Do they think they can get rid of us in that way? Yuan Sun said with apparent displeasure. Meng has drugs. They can get free drugs from them every time, Lin Wensong said. Drugs? Gu Ning realized that Li Zhenjin had already abandoned herself completely. So what? We have their videos and pictures. It's impossible for them to get rid of us, Yuan Sun said airily. Yuan Sun, even so, we should be aware that we can never mess up with the Qing gang. Meng is a man of some power in the Qing gang. If Li Zhenjin is close to Meng, we will probably lose control of her, Lin Wensong said. I know, but I don't want to admit it, Yuan Sun said angrily. After hearing what happened to Li Zhenzhen, Gu Ning left. When she was back in her own apartment, it was only 8 p.m. She had nothing to do, so she sent a message to Leng Xiaoting. Gu Ning wanted to call him, but was afraid to bother him. If he was free now, he would message her back once he read the message. Leng Xiaoting was busier at the end of the year, and he was in the middle of meeting now. Thus he missed Gu Ning's message. An hour later, when the meeting was over, Leng Xiaoting checked his phone. Noticing Gu Ning's message, he immediately called her back while walking out. What's going on? Why did boss walk out in a hurry to make the call? Siming asked Su Jinshan worriedly. Well, I think he must have missed a call from a girl, and he's eager to call her back now, Su Jinshan said. He was green with envy. However, he wasn't sure about it actually. He didn't know how close Leng Xiaoting and Gu Ning were now, but he knew that they had to be closer than before. Otherwise, Leng Xiaoting wouldn't have gone to City F and stayed there for so long to visit Gu Ning. What? Everyone was shocked by the news. They immediately surrounded Su Jinshan asking for more details. Is it true? Is our boss in love? You must know something. Tell us now. Exactly, we're all worried about him. Come on. Tell us what you know. I'm just guessing. If you want to know, why don't you ask him yourself? Su Jinshan didn't dare to tell them his boss's secret, because he would be punished. Everyone felt disappointed, but none of them dared to ask Leng Xiaoting in person. In fact, Su Jinshan guessed correctly, but Gu Ning had only sent Leng Xiaoting a message instead of calling him. I was in a meeting and missed your message, Leng Xiaoting explained the minute that Gu Ning answered his call. Gu Ning could sense that he was nervous. Gu Ning didn't know what to say. Leng Xiaoting was too cautious in love. I knew that you were probably busy, so I didn't call you directly. Hearing that, Leng Xiaoting was relieved. He indeed was too cautious in love with Gu Ning, because he hadn't been in love before and he cared about Gu Ning so much. What are you doing now? Leng Xiaoting asked. I'm in City G. I went to check on the jewelry store and I'm in my apartment now, Gu Ning said. After a second she added, I miss you. Leng Xiaoting immediately felt passionate. He wanted to be by Gu Ning's side right away, but he also knew that he had to fulfill his task first. I miss you too, and I'll come to you the minute that I finish my task, Leng Xiaoting said, trying his best to curb his passion. Gu Ning understood that Leng Xiaoting needed to work and said, Call me before you come to me, and don't surprise me again, because we can miss the chance to meet each other. I'm going to Province Y in a few days. If time permits, I'll also be going to the capital. Who will be with you? Leng Xiaoting asked. He knew that Gu Ning was excellent at stone gambling, and that she had to go to Province Y for it. I'll be alone, Gu Ning said. Where are you going in Province Y? Leng Xiaoting added. City Tung, Gu Ning replied. I'm leaving for City Tung in a few days too, but it hasn't been safe in City Tung recently. This time Leng Xiaoting wasn't happy that they were going to meet each other in the same place, but it was Gu Ning's work, so he couldn't stop her. If you have to go there, do come to me by then or I'll be worried. To Gu Ning's surprise, they would both be in City Tung. In fact, she didn't care that it wasn't safe there, but she promised that she would come to him once she was in City Tung. She missed him so much. Would it bother you if come to you? Gu Ning asked. Of course not, Leng Xiaoting answered. Great. See you then, Gu Ning said. Leng Xiaoting relaxed when Gu Ning gave him an affirmative answer. Gu Ning didn't tell Master Fu and his friends that she was in City G, because she spent most of her time cutting raw materials in the processing plant. There was a pile of raw materials, and she had only cut out half till now. However, only half of it was enough to support jade beauty jewelry. Jewelry wasn't daily commodities after all, and an emerald the size of a fist was adequate for dozens of small pieces of jewelry. No matter how popular the brand was, it was pretty good if they could sell 5 to 6 pieces of jewelry and make millions of yuan on average per day. Gu Ning only stayed in City G for 2 nights, and got aboard the plane to City Tung in Province Y around 9 a.m. the morning of the 3rd day. Gu Ning called Leng Xiaoting before she got on the plane. Leng Xiaoting wouldn't be in City Tung until tomorrow, so Gu Ning would be alone today. Leng Xiaoting wanted to keep Guning company, but he worked in a team, so he could only remind her to be careful. There wasn't a direct plane from City G to City Tung, so Guning had to fly to City Y, which was the capital city of Province Y, and then transfer to City Tung. During the break of an hour before Guning went aboard the plane to City Tung, she found a restaurant to eat in City Y. After the meal, Guning took out an encyclopedia of antiques to read to kill the time. There was an old man in his early 60s with his granddaughter who sat at the table beside Guning. The girl was about 15 years old, and was accompanied by two middle-aged men who were around 30 years old. Both of them looked serious and as if they were bodyguards. The old man's eyes lit up when he found that Guning was reading an encyclopedia of antiques, and asked with astonishment, "Isn't this an encyclopedia of antiques? Do you like antiques?" However, before Guning could answer, the young girl opened her mouth first and said sarcastically, "She must be pretending." "Mind your words," the old man criticized, then apologized to Guning. "I'm so sorry for my granddaughter's rude behavior. Please don't mind her." "It's nothing," Guning said airily. She wouldn't bother to be mad at an impolite young girl. However, the young girl retorted, "I don't think that I'm wrong. Only old people are interested in antiques, and you're too young for that." Indeed, antiques always had a special place in old people's affections, while the young generation was rarely involved, but it didn't mean that there were no young people who had interest in it. "Xiaoyin, couldn't you be polite?" the old man criticized again, and the young girl immediately shut her mouth. She pursed her lips but didn't dare to argue once more. Guning was slightly mad this time. She looked to the young girl and said, "I don't think it has anything to do with you whether I can understand antiques. Do you have to be so sarcastic?" Hearing that, Zhang Hanin replied arrogantly, "I just hate to see people acting like they're really somebody. We just met each other for the first time. And how do you know that I'm acting? Don't you think you're being too arrogant?"
Guning karkuet.
"Then do you know antiques at all?" Zhang Hanin asked. She didn't believe that Guning knew anything about antiques. "Xiaoyin, if you behave like that again, I won't bring you out anymore," Master Zhang threatened, then looked to Guning and apologized again. "I'm so sorry about that." Although Guning found that the girl was annoying, she didn't want to upset Master Zhang. "It's fine. Do you like antiques? Or are you majoring in it?" Master Zhang asked out of curiosity. He was curious because he loved antiques. "I like antiques, so I bought some books to read," Guning replied. "Very well, there aren't many young people who are interested in antiques now," Master Zhang complimented Guning. No matter how much Guning knew about antiques, it proved that she had to be a stable girl since studying antiques was boring. Seeing that her grandfather complimented Guning, Zhang Hanin was displeased. "Grandpa, why don't you test her?" "Xiaoyin," Master Zhang snapped. Although he was curious too, they were merely strangers and it wasn't polite to test Guning all of a sudden. "Miss Gu." At this time a male voice sounded. Guning immediately recognized the voice. She looked over and saw Zhao Yefeng. "Mr. Zhao, what a coincidence." "Oh, it's really you." Zhao Yefeng was excited to see Guning. "Why are you in Province Y? Did you just arrive here or are you heading back?" "I just arrived and I'm going to City Tung. How about you?"
Guning sighed.
"You're going to City Tung?" "Me too." Zhao Yefeng was more than excited now, because he knew that Guning had to be going to City Tung for stone gambling. "Which flight are you going to be aboard?" Guning asked. "Mine will take off at 1:20 p.m. How about you?" Zhao Yefeng asked. "We're the same." "Please have a seat," Guning said. "Sure." Zhao Yefeng sat down beside Guning. He had an intention to go on the trip with Guning so that she might help him pick raw materials. "Mr. Zhao, did you just ignore me?" Meanwhile, Master Zhang's slightly accusing voice sounded, but he wasn't being arrogant actually. The two were familiar with each other. Master Zhang was surprised to see that Zhao Yefeng respected Guning greatly. He could tell that Zhao Yefeng admired Guning's ability instead of her influence. Exactly because of that, Master Zhang was curious to know about her ability, which impressed Zhao Yefeng. Zhao Yefeng immediately looked over and saw Master Zhang. He was surprised as well as excited. Master Zhang, it's so nice to meet you. I'm so sorry I didn't notice you just then. We haven't seen each other for months. How are you doing now? Just the same. It's an old disease. Maybe I should feel lucky that it doesn't kill me, Master Zhang replied airily but seemed sad. Although he was still alive, it was a torture to be ill. Master Zhang apparently didn't want to talk about it, so he changed the subject. It seems your business is thriving now that you're going to City Tung again. My business is just fine. And it's the end of the year, so I want to take a chance and see whether there is good jade in City Tung, Zhao Yefeng said. Do you have new raw materials, Master Zhang? A raw material provider with the family name Zhang? Hearing that, Gu Ning thought of her investigation of the raw material providers in City Tung. There were 3 main providers of raw materials in City Tung, and the Zhang family was one of them. Other than providing raw materials, the Zhang family also ran a jewelry company with a few dozen billion yuan in assets. Is this old man the head of the Zhang family, Zhang Duqing? Gu Ning thought. In fact, this old man was exactly the head of the Zhang family, Zhang Duqing. Although Gu Ning wasn't quite sure about it, she believed that she guessed correctly. If it was possible, she wanted to make an alliance with the Zhang family and pick out all the raw materials with jade inside. Gu Ning wasn't going to sell raw materials, but open a company to supply jade. In that case, it would be much easier for her to make money. After all, it was troublesome to buy raw materials in stores and easily attracted much attention from people, but it would be totally different if she could sell jade through a company. However, she lacked a capable man to help her manage the company. Therefore, Gu Ning wasn't in a hurry to deal with it right now. Not yet. There are plenty left from the first batch, and we won't exploit the next batch until the second half of the year, Master Zhang said. Normally, a mountain would be exploited 2 to 3 times, and the raw materials that were mined out every time were enough for consumption within a year or 2. In that case, it was a long-term thing to exploit raw materials. Miss Gu, do you have an interest to visit Master Zhang's raw materials store when we arrive at Cityting? Zhao Yefeng asked. Sure. Gu Ning was of course willing to do that. I bet she knows nothing about stone gambling, Zhang Hanin said with obvious disdain. Zhang Hanin, shut your mouth right now. Master Zhang was finally annoyed at Zhang Hanin's impoliteness. He felt ashamed that his granddaughter behaved like that in public. Don't forget your manners. Who do you think you are? You don't have the right to mock others. Zhang Hanin was scared and remained quiet. There was no grudge between her and Gu Ning, but she just disliked Gu Ning for no reason. Zhao Yefeng had no positive opinions of Zhang Hanin. He had met her several times before, and she always behaved arrogantly. Not to mention the fact that Gu Ning's ability of stone gambling was extremely outstanding. She had no right to stop Gu Ning from visiting her grandpa's store. The rest of the people in the Zhang family were polite with good manners, but unfortunately, this Zhang Hanin behaved utterly different from her family. At this moment, the intercom announced that their flight was going to take off soon, so they stopped talking and stood up to board the plane. They would be getting aboard the same plane to Citytung, so they walked together to the boarding gate. Master Zhang's group sat in the first class, while Gu Ning and Zhao Yefeng sat in the economy class. Half an hour later, they arrived at the airport in Citytung. Master Zhang's group got off the plane first, and waited for Zhao Yefeng and Gu Ning for a while outside. After they met each other again, Zhang Hanin glared at Gu Ning to show her hatred towards her, but she didn't dare to say a word again. Gu Ning instead ignored her directly. There was an exclusive MPV to pick up Master Zhang. They all were going to the street of raw materials, so Master Zhang invited them to take his car, and Zhao Yefeng as well as Gu Ning agreed. They walked out of the exit to the parking lot. However, all of a sudden, an old man before them stopped and trembled continuously. Master! The middle-aged man beside the old man was shocked, but before he could catch the old man's body, the old man fell down on the ground directly. His face turned pale and his body kept trembling. Master! Call the ambulance now. Master is having a heart attack. Seeing that, Gu Ning dashed to them and half knelt down beside the old man's body, reaching out her hands to press on his chest without hesitation. "What are you doing?" the middle-aged man shouted and was about to pull Gunning away. "Shut your mouth if you don't want him to die."
Koningsnappet.
Master Zhang and others followed her, but didn't know what was going on. Gunning ignored all of them. Looking at the old man, she asked him clearly, "If you trust me, please nod." The old man felt too uncomfortable to say a word, but he was still conscious. Seeing Gunning's face, he felt familiar out of the blue, and trusted her at first sight. In addition, time was his life now. He didn't have time to wait for the ambulance. Thus the old man nodded slightly. Since the old man nodded, his followers wouldn't stop Gunning. Master Zhang and Zhao Yefeng were worried too, but they didn't dare to make noise in such a critical moment. Although Zhang Hanin didn't believe that Gunning was able to save the old man's life, she remained silent, seeing the old man's face turning pale. Gunning, of course, didn't know how to administer first aid, but she used the movement to cover her real intention. She gently pressed the old man's chest in a regular pattern, and the power quickly poured through her hands and into the old man's heart and wrapped all around it. The power then flowed into the arteries that supply blood for his heart. The old man felt a sudden influx of cold air into his chest. Within seconds, he got his breath back and his face was back to a normal color. Seeing that the old man recovered gradually, everyone was relieved. With more and more power flowing into his body, the old man even sensed that his heart started to beat powerfully like it had done 30 years ago. The old man was thrilled, because he hadn't had the feeling for so many years. He knew that his heart was growing increasingly weak, and he could only live on medicines. It was impossible to cure his heart disease completely, but now a young girl who seemed to only be 18 years old helped his heart be healthy again simply by pressing his chest. He even felt more energetic now. What was her skill? And what was the cold air? It was so amazing anyway. The old man became conscious later. He looked at Gunning and her face was all too familiar to him. He also had inexplicable intimacy towards her. All of a sudden, a face emerged in his mind. Yunfan. This young girl resembled Yunfan so much. His son had never married or had children. Otherwise, he would truly believe that this young girl had to be Yunfan's daughter. Nevertheless, the world was big, and it was possible that people resembled each other sometimes. Gunning consumed too much of her power, and her face gradually turned pale, but it would still take a little bit more power to cure the old man's heart. Thus Gunning insisted because she didn't want to give up halfway, even though she wasn't usually willing to spend her power in a large amount like that. Fortunately, she had the night luminescent pearl which could absorb natural power automatically, so it wasn't a big deal that she sacrificed her power to rescue the old man. Seeing Gunning's gradually paling face, the others were all concerned, but no one bothered her. At the same time, they were all shocked to see that the old man obviously recovered within a short time. Oh my! She's amazing! The old man is back to normal now. Indeed! He can breathe steadily. Is she a goddess? People around them all admired Gunning now. When it was done, Gunning drew back her power, standing up. The old man thanked Gunning with sincerity. "Thank you so much for your help. Do you mind having a meal with me later?" The old man had experienced the feelings of being rescued from the edge of death, and even felt that his physical condition was obviously better, so he was convinced that this young girl wasn't simple, and wanted to make friends with her. In addition, if this young girl was able to save his life, maybe she could cure his heart disease. People always paid more attention to their bodies when they started to age. The old man had already given up, and planned to travel around more while he was still alive. Unexpectedly, the sudden appearance of Gunning raised his hope. Even if he couldn't be cured, he would love to live in a healthier condition. "It was my pleasure, and it's no big deal," Gunning said airily. "Maybe it's not a big deal to you, but it is to me. You've saved my life. If you aren't willing to dine with me, I'll feel guilty," the old man said. Gunning understood that the old man wanted to thank her by buying her a meal. However, what the old man wasn't aware of was that Gunning had already cured his heart. He was healthy now. Gunning also knew that this old man wasn't an ordinary old man, and he probably came from a powerful family. Since the old man insisted on thanking her, Gu Ning agreed in the end. However, it was too early for eating now, so Gu Ning said, "It's only 2 p.m. now. How about 6 p.m.?" the old man said. Gu Ning thought for a second before she said, "No problem." After that, Gu Ning and the old man exchanged their numbers before they went their separate ways. Watching Gu Ning disappearing from his sight, Master Tang felt lonely for no reason. "Master, how come this Miss Gu resembles our second lord when he was young so much?" a bodyguard beside Master Tang asked. "I agree. If not for the fact that our second lord has never married or had children, I would almost believe this Miss Gu is his daughter." Exactly, if Yun Fan was willing to marry and have children, his child would be the same age now. Master Tang sighed. He felt sorry for his second son who was always occupied by work and had no interest in building a family. In fact, if it hadn't been for the accident which had happened 19 years ago, Tang Yunfan's personality wouldn't have changed so completely. He was now cold-blooded as well as cruel, and became the famous and frightening Lord Tang. Just because he was cold and cruel didn't mean that he committed crimes often, but he never yielded and was highly loyal to his principles in business. And because of that, the Tang family climbed to the top in business under the control of Tang Yunfan. Although Master Tang thought that Gu Ning had nothing to do with Tang Yunfan, he couldn't help feeling familiar with the young girl. Maybe it was because of his appreciation towards Gu Ning, but Master Tang could only think in that way. Meanwhile, Master Zhang asked Gu Ning gently, "Miss Gu, do you know medical skills?" "I don't know how to practice medicine, but I've learned a unique method of massage to alleviate diseases related to vascular veins and bones. If it's not too serious, it could be cured." Gu Ning knew what was on Master Zhang's mind. However, she indeed knew nothing about medical science, so there was no need to pretend. In fact, she had already had a plan when she had found out that Master Zhang was suffering from a disease. "Well, can you help me then?" Master Zhang asked. He was a little nervous because he was afraid but also looked forward to it. "Sure," Gu Ning answered with alacrity. "Would you please tell me where you feel uncomfortable?" Receiving an affirmative answer from Gu Ning, Master Zhang was excited. "I had a cerebral thrombosis one, and now I'm suffering from its sequelae one. My left hand and legs are very weak. Sometimes they're cold and hurt, so I can't walk for too long. I also need them massaged every day. Although it's not deadly now, it's still painful to suffer. Can it be cured?" "It's normally caused by blood congestion. I'm not completely sure it can be cured yet, but I'm confident that I can help you to be in a better health condition. Why don't we have a try after we arrive at your raw material store?" Gu Ning didn't directly tell him that she could cure his disease, even though she could actually do it because she wanted to be modest. Sure. Master Zhang was thrilled. Although Gu Ning didn't give him a guarantee, he believed in her. Zhang Hanin didn't dare to question Gu Ning's ability after what had happened just then, but she still had doubts. In fact, Citytung was only a small city in the county, but it developed very well. It was universally known that jade was abundant in Burma, and Province Y bordered Burma, so it was a popular place for jade trade. Meanwhile, Citytung had the largest market for stone gambling in Province Y, which was the reason why Gu Ning flew to Citytung. In addition, there were many foreign rich people in Citytung. Many jewelry businessmen from around the globe would also set up an office here to acquire raw jade of high quality for their companies. The antiques market in Citytung was well known too. Thus Gu Ning planned to visit its street of antiques, as well as stone gambling this time. Half an hour later, they arrived at the street of stone gambling. Once Gu Ning was on the street, she was shocked by the scene before her eyes, because it was a hive of activity. Even Gu Ning, who was proud of her adaptability, slightly failed to adapt to it. They didn't waste time walking along the street, but headed straight to the store of the Zhang family. So Gu Ning didn't bother to use her jade eyes to scan those raw materials beside the street. She had no intention to cut raw materials today, because she didn't want to cause a sensation. And she wasn't in a hurry to collect funds by stone gambling, so she would administer Master Zhang the treatment today before discussing cooperating with him. It could be much more convenient for her to open a company providing jade if she had the Zhang family as her supplier. After that, she would go and change her outfit and come back. The Zhang family's store was located in the center. It was a big quadrangle. The main hall was around 50 square meters with many raw materials at a low price piled up in it. There were also 4 other rooms inside, and each of them stored different levels of raw materials. The price also varied according to its level. The manager of this store came out to welcome them the minute that Master Zhang appeared. Master Zhang then guided Gu Ning and the others, walking into a tea room. Gu Ning began to massage Master Zhang's arm after they sat in the tea room. When the power gradually flowed into Master Zhang's body, he felt the cool air. Minutes later, Master Zhang felt greatly relieved and the pain that had tortured him for a long time disappeared little by little. He suddenly felt full of energy, which made him beam with pleasure. Although he had witnessed Gu Ning's extraordinary ability earlier today, it was still shocking to experience it himself now. Gu Ning then moved to his legs. After a while, Master Zhang's 4 limbs recovered. When it was done, Gu Ning drew her hands back. Master Zhang's health condition was better than Master Tang, who was the old man Gu Ning had saved at the airport today, so it didn't cost Gu Ning much power this time. Wow, it's so unbelievable. Master Zhang was more than astonished now. Grandpa, how do you feel now? Zhang Hanin asked with burning curiosity. Except for Gu Ning, Zhao Yefeng and Master Zhang's 2 bodyguards all looked at him for the answer. I don't feel any pain or weakness. Instead, I'm full of strength now, Master Zhang said. His eyes were full of tears of excitement. Really? That's amazing. Zhang Hanin raised her voice, thrilled. Everyone felt happy for Master Zhang. Miss Gu, thank you so much. Master Zhang said to Gu Ning. It's my pleasure, Gu Ning said. You're almost fully recovered now, but I hope that you can exercise more to recover fully. Gu Ning didn't want to shock them more, so she hid the truth that Master Zhang was already fully recovered. It depended on Master Zhang to maintain his health and avoid a recurrence of the sequelae after all. Of course I will, Master Zhang answered. Miss Gu, I don't know how to thank you enough, but if you encounter any trouble in Province Y, please feel free to tell me. Although our Zhang family isn't the most influential family in Province Y, we're a family of great power in this place. As long as I can help, I'll spare no effort to do it for you, Master Zhang promised. The Zhang family's range of influence was limited in Province Y, but Master Zhang was able to help Gu Ning within his area. Gu Ning was in fact waiting for Master Zhang's promise. Since you're willing to do so, I would like to lay my cards on the table. I came to Citytung for stone gambling. I'm running a jewelry store and plan to open branches in the near future, so I need a large amount of raw materials. It's troublesome to choose raw materials from stores one by one in Citytung, and I don't have time for it. I need a long-term stable supply, so I prefer to acquire a batch of them at a time, and I'll cut them myself back in my company. I heard Mr. Zhao's talk with you when we were at the airport in City Y, and got to know that your family is a raw materials supplier. Thus I want to make an alliance with you. What do you think? Gu Ning said directly. Of course I'm willing to make the deal with you. It's a win-win, Master Zhang laughed out. Indeed, both Master Zhang and Gu Ning would gain benefits from the deal. However, it's hard to cut out jade among raw materials. Aren't you afraid that you'll lose money if you acquire a batch of them at a time? Master Zhang asked. Even Zhao Yefeng, who knew about Gu Ning's outstanding ability of stone gambling, felt worried for her. But he was excited at the same time. He wanted to know how much jade Gu Ning could cut out. There is no business without taking risk. I'm not afraid to take a chance, Gu Ning answered with confidence. Master Zhang was also aware of the fact that business was always risky. If he cut out all the raw materials himself, he would get a lot of good jade as well. And it would still be profitable even after deducting the cost of the raw materials, but there was no need for him to do so. Great! I like your confidence. If you have any need, be free to tell me. I'll guide you to the warehouse to pick the raw materials, Master Zhang said. Even Zhao Yefeng admired Gu Ning's ambition, because he didn't dare to do that himself. Great, my staff will arrive tomorrow and we can discuss it then. Gu Ning said. Gu Ning thought that it would be better if Leng Xiaoting helped her in the middle, so she decided to wait for him. She wasn't worried that she would be out of stock if she acquired it late. The flow of goods wasn't that fast, and she had no intention to buy all the raw materials with jade inside. It was already cruel that she used her jade eyes to acquire high-quality jade, and she wanted to leave room for other businessmen. Gu Ning and Master Zhang exchanged numbers before she went out to choose raw materials. Gu Ning noticed that Master Zhang had something to deal with, so she said, "Master Zhang, please feel free to leave if you're busy with your business. We'll be fine here." "Great, then I'll leave first. Please enjoy choosing the raw materials, and the manager will give you 20% off if you want to buy some." Master Zhang was actually eager to go home and tell his family that his disease had been cured. So since Gu Ning was fine here without his company, Master Zhang was of course willing to leave earlier. Thus Master Zhang's group left. Before they left, Zhang Hanin's sight fell on Gu Ning. She was now more curious about her, because what Gu Ning had done totally surprised her. After Master Zhang left, both Gu Ning and Zhao Yefeng pulled a cart over to shop for raw materials. Gu Ning didn't walk into the 4 rooms in the beginning, but had a tour around the hall for a while. She used her jade eyes to scan the raw materials that were piled up in the hall. Although they were believed to be the lowest level, it didn't mean that there was no jade inside at all. Within seconds, Gu Ning discovered 2 raw materials with medium-high level jade, and 1 raw material with a high-level jade inside. The first was as big as 2 fists and the other was as big as a basketball, while the last one was the size of 2 palms folded together. There were also several emeralds under medium level, but Gu Ning didn't bother to take them. She would only take medium-level jade when she needed a large amount of jade, but it wasn't convenient for her to carry too many raw materials now, so she gave them up. Gu Ning intentionally walked around for a long while before she put the 3 raw materials into her cart. But even then, people around her still believed that she was just shopping for fun. Zhao Yefeng instead thought that Gu Ning must have her own skills. However, her fast shopping speed still confused him, and he couldn't help thinking to himself, "Does she really know stone gambling? Miss Gu, you shop so fast." Zhao Yefeng sighed. Professional knowledge might be helpful, but I think that it relies on one's luck to cut out jade as well. I'm choosing raw materials by luck.
Gu Ning sighed.
Zhao Yefeng agreed. Even those knowledgeable experts seldom cut out jade. If they could be 100% or even only 50% accurate with their knowledge, they would be billionaires now. Moreover, most people didn't have Gu Ning's confidence. She wouldn't hesitate to buy raw materials as long as she wanted them. After that, Gu Ning and Zhao Yefeng went to the rooms at the back. They entered room D, which stored raw materials at the D level first. Before long, Gu Ning found more raw materials with jade inside, but they weren't big. The biggest one was as big as half a basketball, and the smallest one was only as big as a fist. Luckily, they were worth a lot. There were few raw materials with medium-high level jade, and even less raw materials with high-level jade inside. Normally, there were only 4 or 5 emeralds above medium-high level among over 1,000 raw materials, and to find top-level jade was even rarer. The majority of jade was around medium level. They then went to room C, and Gu Ning got 4 other medium-high level jade all in a small size. She didn't plan to buy many today, so she wouldn't go to room B and room A. "Miss Gu, would you mind helping me check these raw materials?" Zhao Yefeng pushed his cart with 3 raw materials in it, walking to Gu Ning. Although Gu Ning explained that she relied on her luck, he trusted her ability given what she had done concerning stone gambling before. Gu Ning didn't turn him down, but pretended that she was checking the 3 raw materials seriously. Unfortunately, there was no jade inside them. "I don't think there is jade in any of them. If you trust me, I can help you find 3 raw materials which are highly possible to contain jade. But if they don't, please don't blame me." Gu Ning was generous to share with Zhao Yefeng, but she wouldn't share too many with him. "Really?" Zhao Yefeng was excited. "Of course I won't blame you if there's no jade inside." Gu Ning was being kind to help him, and he wouldn't blame her no matter what the result was. 3 raw materials were around 100,000 yuan and he could afford it. Gu Ning then helped him pick 3 raw materials. One was a waste and one had medium-low-level jade inside, while the last one contained medium-high-level jade. It was not because she wasn't willing to choose 3 raw materials that all had high-quality jade inside. But if she did so, it would arouse Zhao Yefeng's suspicion. No matter what the result is, please don't let anyone else know that I helped you, Gu Ning reminded Zhao Yefeng. Sure, I won't. Zhao Yefeng understood that Gu Ning didn't want to be involved in trouble. He then went to pay his bill, and it cost him 160,000 yuan in all. After that, Zhao Yefeng asked to have his raw materials cut on site. Once there was somebody who was cutting raw materials, over half of the people in the store would gather around to have a look, especially those jewelry businessmen. They all wanted to get the jade as soon as possible. The first raw material that Zhao Yefeng chose contained medium-low-level jade. He was nervous when he handed it to the worker. The machine started to work, and the outer layer of the raw material was removed little by little, falling down on the ground. When the worker made a second cut, the green showed. I see the green. It's the oil green type. Although it was merely medium-low-level jade, Zhao Yefeng was still excited. The minute that the green showed, someone bid, but was stopped by Zhao Yefeng because he would keep it himself. Those who wanted to bid for it felt disappointed, but didn't say anything further. The worker continued to cut the raw materials. Half an hour later, an emerald of the oil green type the size of half a football was fully cut out. Zhao Yefeng was so thrilled that he wanted to thank Gu Ning without delay. But Gu Ning had reminded him to keep it a secret between them, so he gave it up. The second was a waste. Zhao Yefeng was a little disappointed, but he wasn't upset because the first jade of the oil green type was worth over 1,000,000 yuan, so he had already made a fortune. However, the third one contained medium-high-level jade of the water type, which shocked Zhao Yefeng. Jesus! Gu Ning was so lucky. She just picked 3 raw materials and 2 of them have jade. Seeing that the level of the jade was relatively high, Zhao Yefeng planned to share it with Gu Ning later. The third jade was slightly bigger than a fist, and it was worth 20 million yuan. If it was not for the fact that Zhao Yefeng wouldn't sell it, those jewelry businessmen would be in a fierce competition for it. Miss Gu, I didn't expect that you'd be so lucky, and I don't think that I should take them all alone. Why don't we share them together? Zhao Yefeng said to Gu Ning. He was a generous man too. He was willing to share with Gu Ning, which proved that he was an upright man. But since Gu Ning had promised to give them to him, she wouldn't share with him now. Mr. Zhang, thank you so much for your kindness, but I think that I have better jade among my raw materials.
Gu Ning replied.
Even so, Zhao Yefeng tried to persuade Gu Ning to accept his advice, but Gu Ning insisted on not doing so, so he compromised in the end and bore her generosity in mind. It wasn't early when they finished shopping, so Gu Ning and Zhao Yefeng separated afterwards. Zhao Yefeng understood that Gu Ning was going to meet Master Tang, so he didn't invite her to leave with him. Gu Ning found an empty place without people around before putting all of her raw materials into her telepathic eye space. Walking along the street of stone gambling, Gu Ning had an impulse to acquire all the raw materials with jade inside. But she knew that it wasn't the right time to do so. Thus she curbed her impulse. She walked out of the street of stone gambling, taking a taxi to Tengfei Hotel. It was a 5-star hotel in the downtown where Master Tang was staying, so they had an appointment there. Although it was only 4 p.m. and was too early for the dinner, Gu Ning planned to stay in the hotel too, and have a rest before she went to meet Master Tang. After a while, Gu Ning noticed that the driver was driving the taxi to a remote place. Even though Gu Ning wasn't familiar with the route, she was aware that Tengfei Hotel was located in the downtown. All of a sudden, Gu Ning realized that she was in trouble. She had heard earlier that human trafficking was a big problem in Citytung, but she didn't expect that she would encounter it. She calmed herself down and asked, "Hi, why are we going to a remote place?" "Oh, it's a shortcut and we'll arrive soon." The driver lied because he believed that Gu Ning wasn't familiar with the route. Gu Ning thought for a while. She thought that there might be many people who had been trafficked, and their families had to be very anxious. Thus she decided to rescue them. Gu Ning was a girl who abhorred abomination. If it was possible, she would love to wipe human trafficking out all at once. In that case, she probably couldn't meet Master Tang on time today, so she secretly sent him a message and delayed the appointment to tomorrow morning. Master Tang was a little disappointed that he wouldn't be meeting Guning today, but he understood that Guning had her own things to deal with. Hi, we've been on the road for over a dozen minutes now. Why are we still in a remote place? I think we're out of town already, Guning asked again, as if she had no idea that she was in danger. Don't worry. We'll be there in a minute, the driver said, and was relieved to see Guning being naive. Fine. I'm sleepy and I need to have a short nap. Please wake me up when we arrive. Guning yawned like she was exhausted. Then she leaned against the back of the seat, closing her eyes. No problem. The driver was more than willing to see that. Guning obviously didn't close her eyes. She just turned her body so that the driver wouldn't see her face. They were in an isolated area surrounded by mountains already. A few minutes later, the car stopped outside of an abandoned warehouse. The driver called her. Hey, we have arrived already. Guning woke up at once and pretended to be scared to see the scene before her eyes. Where is this place? This is not the Tungfei Hotel. Of course it's not, but since you're already here, get out right now. The driver opened the car door of the back seats, leering at Guning. No, what do you want to do? Guning pretended that she was terrified. You will find out, the driver sneered. Please don't. Well, it's not up to you now. Can you fight against these two muscular men? The driver pointed at two tall, muscular men standing in front of the car. I think you better be quiet or we'll punch you to be. Guning struggled for a few seconds, then got out of the car. Get in. The driver pushed Guning into the warehouse, and Guning didn't resist at all. It was a mess inside. There was a slightly fat man with a plain face who was around 40 years old sitting on a chair. He was smoking in a relaxed manner with his legs crossed and his eyes closed. And there were two strong men standing behind him. In the corner squatted two pretty, well-dressed women in their early 30s along with a young boy who was around 12 years old. They all wore horrified expressions, trembling and weeping in fear. Beside them was another tall and muscular man. Apparently they were trafficked here too. Guning immediately used her jade eyes to scan those men to check whether they carried guns. Luckily they had no guns with them. In that case, Guning would be safe. However, Guning smelt a touch of fresh blood from a pile of agglomeration 10 meters away to her right side. Did they kill someone and throw the body there? Thinking of that, Guning used her jade eyes to see what was behind it, and she was shocked. There was a man and a woman who were around 27 years old dressed all in black behind the agglomeration. Both of them were injured. The man's thigh was severely injured, and the blood soaked through the bandage. The woman was hurt much more severely. Her wound was on her shoulder near the chest, and the blood also soaked through the wet bandages. Her face was extremely pale, as if she could die at any moment. However, what shocked Guning wasn't the fact that they were badly injured, but their faces. Guning recognized them, or to be specific, Tang Aining, as she was called in her previous incarnation, recognized them. Although they weren't familiar with each other, they had a very close connection. They were professional killers like Tang Aining. The man was called Flying Eagle, while the woman was Flying Bird. They didn't serve the same organization as Tang Aining, and Tang Aining had met them during training in the Amazon rainforest. They had also worked together in a grave situation. Flying Bird and Flying Eagle were a couple. They had told Tang Aining that what they wanted most was to live a life like an ordinary person, but it was almost impossible to get out of their organization. Their organization planned to kill them in case their dirty secrets would be exposed, so they had to avoid being caught by the organization. They had been hiding for a long time, which wasn't better than it had been before. At least they had free time when they had been in the organization. However, once they escaped, they would never go back. If Guning guessed correctly, they were probably in the middle of hiding. Boss, I got you one more, and she's a beauty, the driver said to the man who was sitting on the chair. Hearing that, the man opened his eyes, looking over. He was apparently stunned when his gaze fell on Guning's face. Then he leered at her, throwing the cigarette in his hand onto the floor before he stood up, walking towards Guning. This one is truly beautiful. I don't think I'll sell her. The man stopped in front of Gu Ning, reaching out his hand to touch her face. Gu Ning didn't avoid him, but while his hand was still in the air above her face, she grabbed his wrist and broke it without hesitation. The man immediately shouted in pain. Afterwards, Gu Ning kicked the man's abdomen heavily, and the man was kicked off, knocking into the wall before he fell down on the ground with a loud sound. Having been through so many agonizing injuries, the man could barely utter a word, but he was still conscious. Gu Ning had finished it within seconds, so that all the muscular men around didn't realize that she was so good at fighting, until their boss was beaten down. They were annoyed and they all began to attack Gu Ning. Although these men were all bulky and muscular, they were barely comparable with Gu Ning, who was a master of kung fu. Within minutes they were all punched down, lying on the floor moaning in pain. It was beyond their imagination that a teenage girl could be so excellent at fighting. The driver was regretful now. If he had known, he would never have brought her here. Stand up and leave now, Gu Ning said to those who sat in the corner trembling in horror. They immediately got their mind back and thanked Gu Ning before quickly running out of this warehouse. Gu Ning picked up a rope, tying them up. However, she immediately didn't drag them away, but walked towards the agglomeration at her right side. Flying Bird and Flying Eagle panicked a little seeing Gu Ning walking to them. They knew that they had been discovered and unconsciously prepared to defend themselves. Unfortunately, they were badly injured now, and the girl before them was apparently powerful. If she really wanted to hurt them, they wouldn't have any chance to escape. Gu Ning didn't appear before their eyes abruptly, but stopped when she was almost there. I smelt the blood and I know someone's injured and weak. If you want to survive, you have to trust me because I can cure you. Flying Eagle and Flying Bird were both astonished by her acute sense of smell, but after she said that she was able to cure them, their first reaction wasn't excitement but worry. Gu Ning hit right on the point because Flying Bird was in great danger now and would soon be dead if she didn't get care. But they had been shot by guns and it was sensitive, so they were afraid that it would cause them more trouble if Gu Ning found out. In fact, they didn't dare to go to the hospital either. As killers, they could cure basic injuries, especially removing bullets, but the problem was that they lacked tools and medicines. It would only be worse if they touched their wounds rashly. Nonetheless, they were about to die and the most important thing now was to survive. Can she cure gun wounds? Both of them had doubt, but they were willing to give it a try. Flying Eagle then asked, "Could you please keep it a secret among us?" "Of course, I won't tell anyone else about you," Gu Ning replied with sincerity. "Great, we trust you," the man said. After that, Gu Ning walked behind the agglomeration. There was a scalpel, painkillers and hemostatic drugs, and anything else useful she could think of in her telepathic eye space. They could be of great help when she needed them. Gu Ning immediately took the small medicine box out of her backpack and squatted in front of them to open it. Seeing what were inside the medicine box, Flying Eagle's and Flying Bird's eyes lit up. Before Gu Ning continued, Flying Eagle said to her, "Why don't you lend this medicine box to us? I can cure her myself." He was still worried that Gu Ning would find out that their injuries were gunshots. Gu Ning understood their worries, but Flying Bird was severely injured. If Gu Ning didn't cure her with her power, she would die. "Are you sure that you're able to remove the bullet as fast as you can?" Gu Ning asked, but she apparently didn't believe that he could do that. The two were surprised and alert. How could she know that they were injured by guns? However, before they asked, Gu Ning opened her mouth again. "I'm very sensitive to smell, and there is a faint smell of saltpeter on your body. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone else about you. She is in great danger now, and there is no time to waste. You lack strength yourself, so how can you remove her bullet?" Gu Ning said with sincerity, and allayed their concern. They gradually relaxed too. Flying Eagle indeed lacked strength right now, and it was too risky if he was going to remove the bullet from Flying Bird. Therefore, Flying Eagle agreed in the end. Gu Ning immediately took out a pair of scissors to cut off the bandages wrapped around Flying Bird's wound. With the help of her jade eyes, Gu Ning then used a scalpel to remove the bullet expertly. At the same time, she secretly put her power into Flying Bird's body to stop the blood from flowing out. Looking at Gu Ning's expert skills, Flying Bird and Flying Eagle were both impressed. This must not her first time removing a bullet. Who is she? Why is she so good at fighting as well as medical treatment? A few minutes later, the bullet was removed. Gu Ning administered painkillers and hemostatic drugs to Flying Bird at once, then wrapped the wound in gauze. To not arouse their suspicion, Gu Ning didn't cure Flying Bird's wound completely. The injury was healed inside, but its outside looked the same. It was still painful but not severe now. Flying Bird now looked much healthier under the nourishment of the power, and she started to regain her strength. Gu Ning then cured Flying Eagle's wound on his leg. She removed the bullet quickly and administered the same drugs to him. "Thank you so much," the two said to Gu Ning with great sincerity. They knew that Gu Ning had saved their lives and it was far from enough to just thank her orally, but they had no idea how to repay her. "Once we're fully recovered, please feel free to ask for our help. As long as we can do it, we'll spare no effort to assist you," Flying Eagle promised with great gravity. They were of course willing to repay Gu Ning. "What if I want you both to be my closest assistants from now on?" Gu Ning asked seriously. Hearing that, the two were surprised. They understood that Gu Ning meant that she wanted them to be her trustworthy assistants, but they had just met each other for the first time, so why should she believe them? Wasn't she afraid that they could be bad people? Although they weren't bad people and were willing to follow Gu Ning's lead, they were in a dangerous situation now. "We'd love to, but we're in great danger right now, and we don't want you to be involved." They didn't want Gu Ning to suffer along with them. Gu Ning understood that, but she was able to solve the problem. As long as she asked Kay to wipe their names off the wanted list from the intranet inside those killer organizations, they wouldn't be chased any longer. Without a high reward, nobody would be interested in chasing them. "I don't care. If you will be loyal to me, I'll protect you both," Gu Ning said. Although she was young, she had an air of maturity and confidence. Her speech was quite persuasive. However, it was still hard for the two to believe Gu Ning because of their special identity. "Well," they agonized over their choice. "May I know the reason why you hesitate?" Gu Ning asked. "To be honest, someone wants our heads, so we're dangerous to be around," Flying Eagle replied. "If you were not being chased, would you agree?" Gu Ning asked. "It's much easier said than done." Flying Eagle forced a smile. He apparently didn't believe that it was possible. "Well, are you willing to trust that I can protect you?" Gu Ning asked again. "Sure," Flying Eagle and Flying Bird answered with one accord. Gu Ning had already shown her ability in front of their eyes. Gu Ning didn't say another word but took out her phone, calling Kay. "Hey boss, what's up?" Kay asked the minute he answered the call, and he sounded in a great mood. Indeed, after he could walk again, he cheered up a lot. He was now able to climb mountains, run, drive, and so forth. His life was getting increasingly better. "Kay, help me wipe the names of Flying Bird and Flying Eagle off the wanted list from the intranet inside the killer organizations," Gu Ning ordered. "No problem. Do you have an account and password? If you have, it'll be faster." Although Kay was curious about why Gu Ning wanted to do that, he didn't ask the reason. "I'll text you," Gu Ning said before she hung up. Flying Bird and Flying Eagle rounded their eyes in great shock. How can she know our identity? Although they knew that Gu Ning had no intention to hurt them, they were still alert. "How do you know our identities?" Flying Eagle asked coldly. "If you really trust me, please don't ask meaningless questions. If you're willing to follow my lead, never betray me. I won't treat you unfairly either, but if you're reluctant to do so, I won't force you," Gu Ning said. She wouldn't force them, but she knew that they would agree. "Great, we'll follow your lead," Flying Bird answered this time. She had heard of Kay, who was a famous international hacker. Once he acted, it was possible that their names could be removed. In that case, both she and Flying Eagle would be safe. Moreover, Gu Ning had just saved their lives, and there was no reason for her to deny Gu Ning's offer. Gu Ning didn't care that they were in danger, so there was nothing that they should be worried about. Flying Eagle had the same idea, and the two would never leave the other alone. Flying Eagle gave Gu Ning his account and password, and Gu Ning immediately sent it to Kay. 5 minutes later, Kay called Gu Ning back and told her that it was already done. As of this moment, Flying Bird and Flying Eagle had disappeared from this world. Flying Eagle's real name was Gao Yi, while Flying Bird's was Xiao Ya. After that, Gao Yi and Xiao Ya left with Gu Ning. Although they were still injured, they were able to walk normally and didn't feel uncomfortable at all. Gao Yi and Xiao Ya were surprised but didn't show it. They knew when they should be quiet. Before they left, Gu Ning used the trafficker's phone to call the police. They left the remote area by driving the taxi. Gu Ning stopped the car in the parking lot inside a shopping mall. She then went to buy 2 sets of clothing for Gao Yi and Xiao Ya. After Gao Yi and Xiao Ya changed their clothes, they abandoned the taxi, directly taking another car to Tungfei Hotel. While Gu Ning and the other 2 were on their way to the hotel, the police arrived at the warehouse. The group of traffickers was exactly those who they had wanted to arrest these days, and the policemen couldn't thank the person who called them enough. It really was a gift. All of them were arrested without delay. Gu Ning and the other 2 arrive at the hotel around 7 p.m. For their convenience, Gu Ning booked a presidential suite with 2 bedrooms, 1 living room and a kitchen. Gu Ning used a bedroom, while Gao Yi and Xiao Ya shared another. Before long, the hotel sent food materials up to their room, and they planned to cook themselves. They were staying in a presidential suite, so the food was free. Gu Ning went to cook, but Gao Yi felt embarrassed to let his new boss cook for them, so he stopped her. "Boss, please allow me to do that." Gao Yi was almost fully recovered now. "It's fine. I can handle it. You can have a rest first," Gu Ning declined. Gao Yi then compromised. Around 10 p.m. Leng Xiaoting called Gu Ning. "What are you doing now?" Leng Xiaoting asked. "I'm missing you," Gu Ning replied. Although she sounded like she was teasing, she was truly missing him. Gu Ning's words could always affect Leng Xiaoting easily, especially when she said that she missed him. Leng Xiaoting felt turned on every time. "I miss you too, but we won't leave for Citytung until tomorrow afternoon." Leng Xiaoting was hoarse and slightly displeased, because he couldn't meet Gu Ning as soon as he wanted. "Don't worry about me. I have 2 ace fighters accompanying me now, and I'll be safe." Leng Xiaoting was occupied by his task, so Gu Ning didn't want to bother him. "Didn't you tell me that you'd be alone?" Leng Xiaoting asked. "I met them after I arrived at Citytung. I promise they're really reliable," Gu Ning answered. "Great, then I'll come to you when I'm free," Leng Xiaoting said. He couldn't wait to see Gu Ning in Citytung actually. In fact, he didn't have to join the group to fulfill the task, but he had heard that Gu Ning would be in Citytung, so he had then decided to take it. Gu Ning understood that Leng Xiaoting was a stable man, so she didn't reject. The next morning, Gao Yi's leg was back to normal. He didn't feel any pain at all now. If there wasn't an obvious scar left on his leg, he would probably have believed that his leg had never been injured. Xiao Ya was injured more seriously, so she wasn't fully recovered yet, but she felt much better now, and she didn't feel pain unless she pressed on her wound. Both Gao Yi and Xiao Ya were astonished that they were able to recover within several days, and now they admired Gu Ning more than ever. Although it was so unusual, they didn't doubt it. Instead, they felt lucky. Around 9 a.m., Gu Ning went to a bank and opened 2 accounts with 5 million yuan in each of them. She then bought 2 smartphones along with telephone cards. When she was back in the room, she gave both Gao Yi and Xiao Ya a bank card and a smartphone before she gave them her orders. One had to go rent a contemporary shop at the Street of Stone Gambling, while the other should rent 2 machines as well as a cart and take them back to the shop. Gu Ning didn't hide the truth that she planned to collect a large amount of funds by stone gambling. Stone gambling? Hearing that, Gao Yi and Xiao Ya were shocked. Although they didn't know how to play stone gambling, they had heard of it. It was a highly risky business, but it seemed that stone gambling was merely a piece of cake for Gu Ning. Gu Ning explained later, "I have my own special skill, and it's very accurate." Special skill? Gao Yi and Xiao Ya couldn't believe their ears, but they didn't ask further. What they needed to do was believe in Gu Ning and obey her orders. After what they had been through yesterday, they didn't regard Gu Ning as a teenager anymore. They then left to fulfill their assignments. Gu Ning, on the other hand, was going to meet Master Tang this morning. She arrived at the appointed private room at 10:50 a.m., but unexpectedly, Master Tang arrived earlier than her. Master Tang was alone in the private room, and his two bodyguards were standing outside of the door. Seeing Gu Ning, Master Tang felt the inexplicable intimacy once more. But he didn't mind it. He welcomed Gu Ning at once. "Girl Gu, come and have a seat." "Nice to meet you, Master Tang," Gu Ning said before she sat down. "Please help yourself and order anything you want." Master Tang pointed at the menu beside Gu Ning, then pressed the service bell on the side. Before long, a waiter came inside. Gu Ning didn't hesitate and ordered 2 of her favorite dishes. Master Tang did the same. There were only 2 of them eating, so they didn't order too many. After the waiter was gone, Master Tang asked Gu Ning, "Girl Gu, thank you so much again for what you did yesterday. If it hadn't been for you, I probably wouldn't have survived at the airport in City Tung." "Master Tang, it's my pleasure to help," Gu Ning said. "I do admire your modesty." Master Tang complimented her. Gu Ning smiled a little because she had heard many people say that. She of course wouldn't ask people to repay her if she was willing to help them on her own. She wasn't a hypocrite. All of a sudden, Master Tang wore a serious face and said, "However, could you please do me a favor again?" "What favor is it?" In fact, Gu Ning already knew the answer without asking, but she didn't want to jump to conclusions. Gu Ning was indeed right. "Girl Gu, I just want to know, can I be cured?" Master Tang asked with nervousness and anticipation. Actually, Master Tang was already cured. However, Gu Ning couldn't tell him the truth, because it was hard for people to accept that she had cured his disease just by pressing his chest. Thus she gave him a vague answer. "Master Tang, to be honest with you, I know nothing about medical treatment, so I'm not sure whether you can be cured. However, I know a unique method of massage, which can relieve diseases related to vascular veins and bones. If it wasn't a serious disease, it won't recur. When I was massaging you yesterday, I used my unique method of massage. I'm not sure whether it'll recur or not, but I'm confident that you'll be healthy as long as you take good care of yourself." "Really?" Although it wasn't an affirmative answer, Master Tang was thrilled to hear that he could be healthy. During the meal, Gu Ning had a pleasant talk with Master Tang. Master Tang also sincerely invited her to have a trip in City B, and Gu Ning agreed. City B was a developed city like the capital. After the meal, Gu Ning and Master Tang went their separate ways. When she was back in her room, Gu Ning changed her outfit and dressed like a mature woman with heavy makeup and curly hair. Then she left the hotel and took a taxi to the Street of Stone Gambling. She contacted Xiaoya when she arrived. Xiaoya and Gao Yi had already prepared the shop and machines. There were plenty of empty shops and machines provided for those who bought a large amount of raw materials, but couldn't transfer them away for a short period of time. Therefore, it didn't cause Gao Yi and Xiaoya much trouble to settle it. Under the guidance of Xiaoya, Gu Ning soon found the location of the shop. However, the minute Gu Ning walked inside, Xiaoya stopped her and said coldly, "Sorry, miss, this is a private place and no outsiders are allowed to enter." "Well, what if I must go inside?" Gu Ning asked. She deliberately lowered her voice. Gao Yi and Xiaoya, who were professional killers, recognized her at once. Nevertheless, Gu Ning completely changed after she dressed up and wore makeup, and they couldn't believe their eyes. "Boss." Gu Ning was satisfied that they were both able to recognize her. If they failed to do so, Gu Ning would have to doubt their ability. "Xiaoya, please guard the warehouse. Gao Yi, take a cart and let's shop for raw materials together," Gu Ning said. "Sure," the two answered. After that, Gao Yi pushed a cart, following Gu Ning out. Gu Ning used her jade eyes the moment raw materials appeared in her sight. Once she found that there was jade inside, she would buy it. Of course, Gu Ning wouldn't buy every piece of raw material with jade inside. She planned to acquire all the raw materials with high-level as well as top-level jade, and half of the raw materials with medium-level as well as medium-high-level jade inside. As for those raw materials that contain jade whose level was lower than medium-low level, Gu Ning would directly ignore them. There was 0 to 3 raw materials with high-level jade inside in a normal shop. That was to say, Either there was no high-level jade or at most there was 3 pieces of it in a shop normally. As for top-level jade, Guning barely found one in many shops. Meanwhile, many shops had raw materials with medium-high-level jade inside. But the amount didn't exceed 10. Guning didn't cut the raw materials on site, but packed them up, taking them away. In the first shop she got 3 raw materials with medium-high-level jade, and 1 with high-level jade inside. Gaoi pushed the cart, and it wasn't convenient for him to walk inside with Guning, so he waited for her outside. However, within 10 minutes, Guning stepped out with a big cardboard box, which shocked Gaoi. "She's so quick." Gaoi immediately walked over to take the box from Guning. It weighed around 60 pounds. In the second shop, Guning still finished shopping within 10 minutes, and she got almost the same amount of raw materials as the first shop. Guning then continued to buy raw materials. She had already got 45 raw materials with jade inside by the time she reached the 7th shop, among which 5 contacted top-level jade. So Guning put them away in her telepathic eye space while packing. There were several of them in a large size, and there was no more room in the cart to put them. Thus Gaoi first went back to the warehouse before he came back again. It wasn't uncommon that people would acquire raw materials in a large amount, so no one paid much attention to them. They only cared about those who cut out raw materials with jade or even priceless jade. Xiaoya was surprised to see Gaoi come back so soon with a cart full of raw materials. The second time, Guning got 50 raw materials in 9 shops. 2 of them contained top-level jade, and Guning put the 2 in her telepathic eye space too. Gaoi then moved the raw materials back to the warehouse again. The third time they went to a large store that belonged to the Wang family, which was one of the 3 largest raw material suppliers in Citytung. The Wang family also had a quadrangle in the same structure as the Zhang family. The cheapest raw materials at the price of hundreds of yuan each were in the front hall, while there were rooms ranked as A, B, C, and D according to the different levels of raw materials at the back. The raw materials were at the price of hundreds or thousands of yuan a pound in room D. The price rose to between thousands and dozens of thousands of yuan a pound in room C. In room B, the price stayed at dozens of thousands of yuan a pound, but in room A, the raw materials already had a window, which meant that it was highly possible to cut out jade. In that case, the price rocketed up to millions or dozens of million yuan each. However, the size and value of the jade inside the raw materials in room A were still in doubt, and it was still possible that there was only a thin layer of jade, so buyers had to have the courage to gamble. Guning had a tour around the hall first, and found 3 raw materials with medium-high-level jade inside. Then she went to room D and room C, and got 16 pieces of medium-high-level jade, 5 pieces of high-level jade and 2 pieces of top-level jade. When Guning walked into room B, she noticed a huge raw material the size of her body. Although they had the same size, the raw material was a stone, so it would be many times heavier than her. Approximately, it had to weigh at least 400 pounds. There was dense and strong power inside this huge raw material. It was a piece of medium-high-level jade, but she would have to cut it out to see its type. Its outer layer wasn't very thick, and it should weigh around 300 pounds after its outer layer was removed. A piece of jade that size had to be worth over 1 billion yuan at least. Thinking of that, Guning was thrilled, and she moved the huge raw material into her cart without delay. Because of her power, she was full of strength and much more powerful than ordinary people. However, her action shocked everyone around. How is she able to move a huge raw material which is much heavier than herself into the cart? Guning noticed their reaction, but she didn't mind. She pushed the cart out to pay the bill. When people saw that Guning pushed her cart out with a huge raw material inside, they were all astonished. Such a huge raw material from room B had to cost 15,000 yuan a pound at least, and it would cost at least 7 million yuan in total. Wow! Everybody couldn't help taking a long breath in, because no one believed that the huge raw material was worth risking. Even the manager failed to figure out why this woman chose this huge raw material. Their boss also wasn't positive about it. Their boss was a well-known jade expert. If he wasn't positive about it, no one else would be. Accordingly, consumers who were familiar with their store all believed that this huge raw material was a waste. And so this raw material had stayed in their store for 2 years because no one was willing to buy it. Nevertheless, Gu-ning bought it today. The manager of course wouldn't stop her. In addition, he would make a high commission. However, Gu-ning was aware that there was greatly valuable jade in it, so she was willing to pay for it even if its price was 70 million yuan. This huge raw material weighed 450 pounds. It cost 20,000 yuan a pound, but the manager gave Gu-ning a discount so she paid 7.8 million yuan in the end. After that, Gu-ning packed those relatively small raw materials up in cardboard boxes and let the workers in the store help her move the huge raw material out. Gao Yi, who was waiting outside, rounded his eyes in shock when he saw the huge raw material. Is there really jade inside? If not, boss will lose a fortune. Gao Yi then moved all the raw materials back to their warehouse, and Gu-ning told him to have a rest, and that she would call him if she needed his help later. This time she planned to cut out some raw materials here. The Wang family was one of the 3 largest raw material suppliers in Citytung, so many jewelry businessmen would come here looking for high-quality jade. There were more pieces of high-level jade in Room B. If not for the huge raw material, Gu-ning wouldn't have walked out in such a hurry. She went back to Room B as fast as she could to pick up those 2 raw materials with high-level jade, and 2 with medium high-level jade. However, right when Gu-ning was about to pick up the last raw material with medium high-level jade inside, a voice stopped her. Hey, I saw this raw material first. Give it to me. A girl who was around 17 years old shouted at Gu-ning rudely, then she ran to Gu-ning to grab it. Gu-ning turned her body and escaped from the girl's hands. Don't you know the rules in stone gambling? The person who gets it first owns it, not the person who sees it first owns it. Gu-ning wasn't mad, but looked at the girl coldly. Exactly. There are rules in stone gambling, and this girl is so rude. Someone criticized. So what? Do you know who I am? I'm the daughter of the Wang family, Wang Xinyan. This is my family's store, so it is mine if I say so, the girl said arrogantly. Hearing that she was the daughter of the Wang family, people around were all scared, especially when they found out that she was Wang Xinyan. Why? Because she was notorious for her rude and unkind behavior. She is the daughter of the Wang family? She is a troublemaker. Exactly. No one dares to have bad blood with the Wang family. I heard that a young girl also picked up a raw material that Miss Wang liked last time, and she wasn't willing to give it back either. She even had a fight with Miss Wang. Because of that, her father's settled deal with the Wang family was cancelled. I heard of that too. Miss Wang had a scratch on her arm, but the girl had several scratches. One was even on her face, another man added. Then he persuaded Gu-ning with kindness. Miss, I think you better give this raw material back to her. You can't afford the result. The Wang family was also well known for its rudeness and arrogance in Citytung, because it was not only one of the largest raw material suppliers in Citytung, but the second son in their family was the vice mayor of Citytung. The Wang family was influential in both politics and business, so no one dared to act against them. Although it had nothing to do with Gu-ning, she had a bad impression of the Wang family now. What if I refused to give it to you? What can you do to me? Gu-ning asked Wang Xinyan, and she didn't seem afraid at all. Why did Wang Xinyan have to get this raw material? Was she only being naughty or she was positive about it? If you don't give it to me, I'll have someone drive you out. Wang Xinyan threatened. Really? However, I don't think you can make the decision. If the boss of this store agrees to do so, I'll leave right away, Gu-ning said. You! Wang Xinyan was mad. She didn't expect that Gu-ning wasn't afraid of her at all. Don't you dare leave. I'll go and find my grandpa. Saying that, Wang Xinyan turned around running out. Seeing that, everyone was looking at Gu-ning worriedly, but she still seemed at ease. Wang Xinyan's grandpa was in the yard at this time, so she soon went back with her grandpa. Wang Xinyan's grandpa was called Wang Hongming. He was the leader of one of the 4 most influential families in Citytung. There were 4 main influential families in Citytung, namely the Shi family, the Zhang family, the Shun family, and the Wang family. Among them, both the Zhang family and the Wang family were raw material suppliers. Wang Hongming seemed in a bad mood, but no one knew the reason. Although the Wang family was always arrogant, they would also compromise if they were the extremely unreasonable side. Grandpa, it's her. She grabbed the raw material away from me. Wang Xinyan pointed at Gu Ning, complaining to her grandpa. What exactly happened? Wang Hongming asked. He had a natural gravitas and air of threat, and he clearly knew about his granddaughter's character. It was highly possible that his granddaughter exaggerated it. However, his granddaughter had an outstanding instinct. Since she wanted this raw material, it was also quite possible that there was jade in it. Thus he didn't want to lose it either. Therefore, he intentionally used his gravitas to threaten Gu Ning, so that she would give it up herself. However, Gu Ning didn't feel threatened at all. She met Wang Hongming's eyes directly and said, I picked up this raw material first, but Miss Wang claimed that she saw it before me. I don't think that there is such a rule in stone gambling. Wang Hongming squinted. He didn't expect that this woman would stand up against him. Grandpa, I just turned around to pull my cart, but she grabbed it right away. Wang Xinyan insisted. Miss, since my granddaughter saw it first and she wants it badly, would you please give it back to her? There are plenty other raw materials in our store, so please choose another one. My granddaughter has a bad temper, and she won't listen to any of us, but we all don't want her to attack you. It seemed like Wang Hongming was being friendly to Gu Ning, but he was actually threatening her. Well, I can give this one back to her, but what if I pick another raw material and she claims that she saw it before me again?
Gu Ning sighed.
Wang Hongming immediately wore a pleased face. People around also believed that Gu Ning yielded and compromised. However, they didn't know that Gu Ning was actually preparing for her small revenge. It won't happen again. I'll take her out the minute she gets this raw material, Wang Hongming promised. Very well. Gu Ning gave the raw material to Wang Xinyan. Wang Xinyan grabbed it without hesitation and gloated over her victory. With the raw material in her hands, Wang Xinyan left with Wang Hongming. There was a dense sense of coldness at the bottom of Gu Ning's eyes. She had planned to only take half of the medium-high-level jade and all of the top-level and high-level jade, but now she changed her mind. She would take all the raw materials, even those with medium-level jade inside. Before long, Gu Ning picked out all the raw materials with jade that medium level and above from room B, C and D, and put them into her cart. There were 68 of them in total. 3 of them contained top-level jade. 7 of them contained high-level jade. 21 of them contained medium-high-level jade, and the rest all contained medium-level jade. Gu Ning didn't even ignore the 2 raw materials with the priceless jade inside that was in room A. One of the raw materials was as big as a basketball, while the other was about the size of a football. Everyone was stunned by Gu Ning's shopping spree of raw materials. Someone even thought that she must be crazy because she was spending money completely like a spendthrift. The manger was also shocked when Gu Ning went to pay her bill. The pile of her raw materials cost 26.8 million yuan in all, and the 2 raw materials from room A were worth 12 million yuan. Because they already showed a window of jade inside. The raw material that was the size of a basketball from room A cost 7 million yuan, while the other, which was about the size of a football, cost 5 million yuan. If the jade inside of them was 2/3 of their size after the outer layer was removed, the bigger one and the smaller one would be worth at least 10 million yuan and 8 million yuan respectively. In fact, it wasn't very profitable to buy raw materials in room A, but it was highly possible to make money. People around Gu Ning while she was paying her bill, instead, all felt concerned for her if she lost. Gu Ning settled her bill within seconds. When she had just finished, she heard Wang Xinyan's voice from the area of stone cutting. There is jade. There is jade inside, Grandpa. Wang Xinyan raised her voice with excitement. Wang Hongming was also pleased to see that. Gu Ning already knew that the raw material contained jade, so she wasn't surprised. The jade belonged to Wang Hongming, so no one bid for it, because the Wang family also ran a jewelry store, and so Wang Hongming naturally wouldn't sell it. The worker washed the layer of dust off of the jade, and said with astonishment, "It's light pink, and has to be of the pink lotus root type." What? It's a medium high-level jade. Indeed, it's worth a lot. Wow, I'm so envious. I chose it. Wang Xinyan said with great pride. And Wang Hongming beamed with pleasure. Miss Wang is really a promising young girl with outstanding ability of stone gambling. Master Wang must be very proud of you. Everyone flattered them continuously.
Koningsneret.
It was too early to be so happy. She understood that what she was going to do would definitely annoy the Wang family. They would probably try to hurt her secretly, but she didn't care, because she had Leng Xiaoting's support now. And Leng Xiaoting was more than willing to protect her. Speaking of Leng Xiaoting, he was already on a private jet flying to Citytung now. Chen Meng was the pilot while Gu Yueza, who ranked 9th in their team, was the co-pilot. In the plane Xian Bei, Si Ming and Su Jinshen were chatting casually, but Leng Xiaoting sat alone at the back staring at his phone with affection in his eyes. Si Ming noticed that and was surprised. He immediately spoke to Xian Bei and Su Jinshen in a low voice. Hey, look at our boss. He keeps staring at his phone with fondness in his eyes. Is he looking at pictures of beauties? Xian Bei and Su Jinshen looked to Leng Xiaoting at once. However, Leng Xiaoting clearly heard what Si Ming said. So he put his phone down, giving them a cold look. Thus when Xian Bei and Su Jinshen turned back, they met Leng Xiaoting's cold look right away. They felt like they had both been caught at a crime scene, and immediately turned their eyes away. Si Ming panicked too. It felt so bad that they were caught while gossiping about their boss. Although they knew that their boss wouldn't be mad at them because of that, they were frightened under the pressure of their boss's air. Thus Si Ming changed the subject without hesitation. Jinshen, where were we just then? Oh, you just told us that your family introduced a girl to you. How is she? The blind date was so boring. I hated it. Su Jinshen said with strong dislike. I agree. You still have a long life ahead. I don't think you need to worry about that, Xian Bei said. In the Wang family store, people were all astonished when Guning pushed her cart, which was full of raw materials, walking to the area of stone cutting. Jesus! She bought a lot. I think that there are too many of them. Look, there were 2 raw materials with a window. The cart must cost at least 20 million yuan. She must be super rich. Wang Xinyan and Wang Hongming were both shocked too. It's meaningless to buy so many raw materials. They could all be waste, Wang Xinyan said acidly. Wang Hongming apparently didn't believe that Guning was able to cut out jade. However, Wang Xinyan had just grabbed a raw material with a medium-high-level jade of the pink lotus root type inside from her. If Wang Xinyan hadn't grabbed it, the valuable jade would be hers. In that case, Wang Hongming couldn't help thinking to himself about whether the woman had just been lucky, or if she really had her own special skills. How can you know the results before they're even cut out? Guning retorted with confidence. Gee, do you think it's easy to cut out jade? Wang Xinyan looked at Guning like she was an idiot. Well, let's see, Guning said. I think they're all waste and you'll be broke, haha. Wang Xinyan of course hoped that Guning would fail. No one knows what is going to happen till it really happens. Although stone gambling is a highly risky business, I'm confident that I can win, like this jade of the pink lotus root type. Guning stopped at this time. There was no need for her to finish the sentence, because Wang Xinyan and Wang Hongming understood her meaning. Wang Hongming was curious about Guning now. This woman seems to not be an ordinary person. Did she know that there was jade of the pink lotus root type in the raw material beforehand? If so, there could be more raw materials with jade inside in her cart. Wang Hongming started to sense that something was wrong. I told you that I saw the raw material before you. Wang Xinyan was reluctant to admit the fact that Guning had also been positive about the raw material. Anyway, we were both positive about it. It makes no difference who the first one was. Guning smiled and sounded sarcastic. You! Wang Xinyan was mad. She increasingly hated Guning now. All of a sudden, an idea dawned on Wang Xinyan. She wore an evil smile and said, Since you're so confident, why don't we have a bet? Oh, how? Guning wouldn't reject it. Except for the 2 raw materials with a window, if you can cut out 10 pieces of jade from the rest of the raw materials in your cart, I'll give this jade of the pink lotus root type to you. Otherwise, you have to buy it at full price, Wang Xinyan said. Xinyan, don't be so naughty. Wang Hongming snapped. It wasn't because he had no confidence in Wang Xinyan, but he didn't want to lose the jade of the pink lotus root type. What if Gu Ning won? Although he didn't believe it, he was worried. And it would be shameful if Wang Xinyan lost. However, in the onlookers' eyes, they believed that Wang Xinyan was taking advantage of Gu Ning. It was universally acknowledged that 9 out of 10 raw materials could be waste. If there were 2 raw materials with jade inside in Gu Ning's cart, it would be great luck. The point was that Wang Xinyan had already gotten the jade of the pink lotus root type, and she absolutely wouldn't let Gu Ning win easily. Even so, no one dared to say a word. It had nothing to do with them after all, and none of them were willing to stand up against the Wang family. Grandpa, do you think that I would lose? Wang Xinyan argued. Well, fine. You can do whatever you want. Wang Hongming compromised. Wang Hongming spoiled Wang Xinyan rotten because only Wang Xinyan liked jade as much as he did. She was also willing to learn. Most importantly, Wang Xinyan had outstanding instinct, and she often cut out jade from raw materials. Even he couldn't do that. Wang Xinyan's rude and self-willed character came into existence exactly because her grandpa spoiled her. With the approval of Wang Hongming, Wang Xinyan challenged Gu Ning. Do you dare? Of course. Why not? Gu Ning agreed willingly. She was going to cut out raw materials here after all, and she was sure that she would win. However, others didn't believe so. All of them thought that she was doomed to fail. Wang Xinyan was jealous of Gu Ning's generosity. Although the Wang family was super rich and had a wealth of 10 billion yuan, she only had savings of hundreds of thousands of yuan. Then let's begin. Wang Xinyan urged with impatience. However, I think we better sign an agreement before we begin in case someone regrets. Gu Ning proposed because she had no trust in the Wang family. Wang Xinyan was displeased facing Gu Ning's mistrust, but to convince her, Wang Xinyan agreed. Sure, no problem. Wang Hongming was arrogant but not dumb. He started to get anxious seeing Gu Ning being so confident, but he still didn't believe that Gu Ning had the ability to cut out 10 pieces of jade from her 60 or so raw materials. Minutes later, they signed the agreement, and Gu Ning began to cut out her raw materials. There were 3 machines in the store, and only one was occupied, so the other 2 worked together to cut out Gu Ning's raw materials. Gu Ning chose a raw material the size of a football with medium-level jade inside first. She drew the lines herself before she handed it to the worker. The second one was as big as an American football, and also contained medium-level jade. Gu Ning drew the lines on it too. Many people gathered around at once. No one wanted to miss this exciting bet. The machines were working, and Wang Xinyan and Wang Hongming were nervous. The green shows, the worker said with excitement after the first cut. His voice attracted all the attention of the people around him. What? There is jade inside? How is it possible? Wang Xinyan couldn't believe her ears. Neither could Wang Hongming. How is it possible? Nevertheless, it was the truth. What type is it? Someone asked. The worker cleaned the dust from the jade and had a closer look. It's dark green with a smooth texture. It must be black jadeite. Black jadeite. It's a rare medium-level jade, someone said with thrill. There is probably just a thin layer of it. Wang Xinyan snorted. She of course wanted Gu Ning to lose. Thinking of the possibility that she could fail, Wang Xinyan's expression became evil. No, I can't lose. We'll know whether there is only a thin layer of it, Gu Ning said with confidence. Wang Hongming felt anxious again. He suddenly had a feeling that there were probably more than 10 pieces of jade among her raw materials. Miss, do you want to sell it? Someone bid at once. Yes, but I'll sell it after it's fully cut out, Gu Ning said. Since she said so, people around her waited for the final result. Gu Ning's second raw material that was cut out was jade too, and Wang Xinyan was more than upset now. Jesus! This miss is so lucky. Indeed, I've never seen another person who can cut out 2 pieces of jade consecutively. Everyone was amazed. How is it possible? Why? Wang Xinyan couldn't believe her eyes, and refused to accept the truth. Wang Hongming was displeased too. Is this woman lucky or able? However, no one would believe that she was just lucky to cut out 2 pieces of jade consecutively. However, if this woman had extraordinarily outstanding ability of stone gambling, there could be more jade in those raw materials. Wang Hongming almost had a breakdown. Normally, the workers would be thrilled to cut out jade because they could be famous by doing so, but now it was a completely different situation. Their boss didn't want them to cut out jade at all, so their hands were trembling slightly. The raw materials in their hands were like hot potatoes that they wanted to throw away, but they couldn't do that. The second piece of medium-level jade was of the water type. At this time, the third machine was available, so Gu Ning took out the third raw material, still with medium-level jade inside. The green showed within minutes too. Everyone was more than shocked now. Wang Hongming was extremely displeased now, and Wang Xinyan's face distorted in jealousy. Once someone cut out jade, firecrackers would be exploded so that people would be aware of the good news. Meanwhile, more and more people swarmed into the store. "Nice to meet you, miss. I'm the manager of Baoyuan Company, Zhang Yan. This is my name card. I hope that we can cooperate someday." A man immediately introduced himself to Gu Ning. Baoyuan Company was a second-tier brand in the jewelry industry. Gu Ning's next goal was precisely to expand her client group for her jade provider business, which she was going to open soon. And jewelry companies were the majority of her potential clients, so she was more than willing to meet the manager. "Nice to meet you too. My name's Tang Aining." Gu Ning used the name in her previous incarnation, but wasn't worried that it would cause her any trouble if the Tang family and Qi Ziyue found out. Let alone there being so many different people with the same name. Even if she showed up with the name Tang Aining in front of their eyes, they wouldn't doubt it at all because she had changed completely. Gu Ning then exchanged name cards with the man. "Miss Tang, nice to meet you. I'm the manager of Jinyu Jewelry, Qin Yin." "Miss Tang, so glad to meet you. I'm..." More and more managers of jewelry companies came to Gu Ning's side and exchanged name cards with her in search of future cooperation. Gu Ning didn't reject. Within a short time, Gu Ning received 7 name cards including first-line, second-line and third-line jewelry brands. Someone bid the minute that the first jade was fully cut out. 5 million yuan. 5.5 million yuan. 13 million yuan. In the end, the black jadeite was sold at the price of 13 million yuan. To not expose her real identity, Gu Ning had told Kay to open an account in a Swiss bank for her earlier. The Swiss bank had an extremely high-level secrecy system and was well known as the most trustworthy bank around the world. About a quarter of the world's personal wealth was stored in the bank. Politicians, business tycoons, and A-list celebrities in the world all put their money in the Swiss bank, which had also created Switzerland's world-famous financial industry. In that case, even if someone wanted to investigate her identity, he or she was doomed to fail. The first deal was finished within minutes. Gu Ning then took out her fourth raw material and it was the same. Everyone rounded their eyes in great shock. It was shocking enough that she had already cut out 3 pieces of jade consecutively, but it seemed that there was more to come. The second jade was fully cut out later, and was sold at the price of 8 million yuan. Gu Ning's fifth raw material also cut out valuable jade. Everyone was stunned, and no one could believe that it was real. They felt like they were in a dream which was too good to be true. Jesus! This is the first time that I've ever witnessed someone cut out 5 pieces of jade consecutively. Indeed. I think there's more jade in the rest of the raw materials. I agree. Many people started to believe that. Why does she look so familiar? Who? Someone asked. I can't remember it now all of a sudden. The news went abroad soon, and more people swarmed inside of the store. Its hall was filled with people now. Stop it now. Wang Xinyan suddenly opened her mouth. If it continued, she was doomed to fail, which was the last thing she wanted to experience in this world. Thus she tried to deny the bet. Although Wang Hongming had the same idea, he felt embarrassed to do so. What this woman had done today was beyond his imagination. He was shocked and regretful, because those raw materials were all from his own store. It was painful for him to see more jade cut out from the rest raw materials, but he couldn't take them back because he had already sold them. What? Do you want to deny the bet? Gu Ning looked to Wang Xinyan asking sarcastically. Hearing that, everyone showed disdain towards Wang Xinyan. Wang Xinyan felt a little embarrassed in such a situation, even though she was usually shameless. However, she raised her voice and said, "If so, what can you do to me?" She didn't believe that Gu Ning could handle her. She was the daughter of the Wang family. "What do you think, Master Wang?" Gu Ning said to Wang Hongming. It sounded so sarcastic and provocative. Wang Hongming flushed a little. He knew that it was embarrassing, but he sincerely didn't want it to continue, so he used an excuse. "Since Miss Tang already cut out so many pieces of jade, I don't think that you lack the jade of the pink lotus fruit type at all. Why don't we stop right now?" "Master Wang, you must be kidding me. This jade of the pink lotus fruit type is worth at least 20 million yuan. Why should I abandon it?" "Well, I'm not an unreasonable person either. If I win, you don't have to give this jade of the pink lotus fruit type to me, but you have to pay me the same amount of money as its price. The Wang family is a well-known super-rich family in Citytung, so I think that 20 million yuan is barely anything to you, right?" Gu Ning said, still in a provocative way. Wang Hongming was displeased and slightly mad. Although 20 million yuan truly was nothing for the Wang family, he wasn't willing to give it to a stranger out of the blue. "Miss Tang, are you sure?" Wang Hongming asked and threatened. "Why not? Your granddaughter is the one who proposed the bet, and now she wants to deny it? Don't you think that it's shameful?" Gu Ning asked coldly. She wasn't weak or a chicken. The crowd burst into discussion at once. Exactly. They have no right to do that. The Wang family is an influential family. It's so inappropriate for them to do that. Indeed. I saw Miss Wang grab the jade of the pink lotus fruit type from Miss Tang just then with my own eyes. What? It's so shameful. It's not the first time the Wang family has done such a thing either. Although the Wang family was powerful, it wasn't dominant, so many people still dared to discuss it. Especially the representatives of the jewelry companies. They stood with Gu Ning and weren't afraid of the Wang family at all, because the power behind them was much more influential than the Wang family. Wang Hongming was embarrassed, but couldn't vent his anger in public, because it would give others ammunition. Thus he tried his best to curb his anger and said icily, "Fine, you can continue cutting those raw materials. If you win, I'll pay you the same amount of money as its price." The Wang family didn't lack jade, but it didn't have many pieces of medium-high-level jade either, so he would rather pay Gu Ning the money and keep the jade. "Grandpa." Wang Xinyan disagreed. "Shut up. You brought this up and you must bear the result," Wang Hongming snapped. He was now a little annoyed at Wang Xinyan's self-willed personality. If she hadn't made the bet with Gu Ning, it wouldn't have ended up like this. "Grandpa, we're one of the most influential families in Citytung, and my uncle is the vice mayor. Do we have to care about a stranger?" Wang Xinyan argued, and didn't hide her intention to threaten Gu Ning at all. "Oh, so the vice mayor can bully others whenever he wants to? Shouldn't a government officer be upright and reasonable? Why is your uncle the opposite? Moreover, the vice mayor isn't the most powerful man in this city. What if someone in a higher position than your uncle finds out about what you've done? What will happen to your uncle?"
Gu Ning sighed.
Actually, Wang Hongming wanted to see whether Gu Ning would panic because of their family's network. But unexpectedly, Gu Ning wasn't afraid at all. "Xinyan, shut up right now. This is your own business, so don't involve our whole family and your uncle. I don't want you to cause any misunderstandings." Wang Hongming criticized Wang Xinyan. He indeed was worried that his second son would be affected. If his son's career was damaged, the Wang family would be hurt too. In addition, the Wang family had never encountered such a trouble before today. This woman doesn't care about our Wang family's power. Does she have more powerful backing? Wang Hongming couldn't help thinking to himself. Wang Xinyan was reluctant to accept it, but didn't dare to utter another word, so she compromised in the end. She could now only wish that Gu Ning wouldn't cut out more pieces of jade. The gamble went on. Within minutes, the sixth piece of jade was cut out and sold. Every time Wang Hongming heard that there was another piece of jade in Gu Ning's raw material, he became more upset. Gu Ning had cut out a lot of pieces of medium-high level jade till now. However, the workers were feeling tortured. They now could only hope that their boss wouldn't vent his anger on them. Otherwise, they could be fired. When the 7th piece of jade of the hibiscus type was cut out, a worker's hands were trembling and there was a dense layer of sweat around his forehead. How is it possible? How? Wang Xinyan almost cried in anxiety. Wang Hongming gave up right then. He knew that they would definitely lose, and was more jealous of Gu Ning's ability of stone gambling. Oh, I remember it now. All of a sudden, the man who had said that Gu Ning looked familiar opened his mouth again. I read the news on the internet. There was a woman who cut out 4 pieces of medium-high level and high-level jade continuously in City G the other day, and she made 345 million yuan at that time. Everyone regards her as the Queen of Jade. I think that she is probably the Queen of Jade. What? The Queen of Jade? People were all shocked, looking to Gu Ning. Wang Hongming had heard of it too but didn't believe it, because he thought that it must be a publicity stunt or the woman was just lucky. But now, if this woman before his eyes was the Queen of Jade, the news had to be the truth, because she had already shown her ability in front of them. Thinking of this woman's extremely outstanding ability, Wang Hongming gave the raw materials in Gu Ning's cart a worried glance. Is there a piece of jade in every? Wang Hongming didn't dare to continue thinking about it, because he couldn't accept the truth. Someone immediately used his phone to take pictures of Gu Ning. Gu Ning noticed that, but she didn't stop him. Since she changed her outfit and appearance, she wasn't afraid that someone would recognize her. Before long, a piece of news with the title "The Queen of Jade cut out more highly valuable jade in City Teng" to be continued was released. Not many people knew who the Queen of Jade was, but the news was shocking enough. Citizens in City Teng were all aware of the high risk of stone gambling. Thus they were all curious as to why it suddenly became so easy to cut out jade. Some searched the Queen of Jade on the internet at once, and there was more astonishing news about her. There were photos attached too. Although it was only a profile, it still wasn't difficult to recognize that the woman in the photos was the woman in front of their eyes. And people were all astonished by the amount of money she had made. She had made 345 million yuan last time with 4 pieces of jade, and this time she got 6 pieces of jade, which meant that she was going to make even more money. Although the majority that she cut out was medium-level jade, and its price was much lower, it was already a fortune in ordinary people's eyes. In addition, it hadn't finished yet. More and more people reposted the news and an increasing number of people got to know about it. Many of them who lived nearby ran to the street of stone gambling to witness it with their own eyes. Gu Ning cut out a high-level jade from the 8th raw material. It was of the glass type. The 9th piece was also a high-level jade. It was violet. Wang Hongming almost went crazy, trembling from anger and disappointment. Why? Why can this woman cut out so many pieces of jade? Why? Wang Xinyan was already struck dumb. She wished that she was in a dream. And then Gu Ning directly took out the 10th raw material with a top-level jade inside. When a worker announced that there was jade inside, no one was surprised again, because they were already used to it. If there was no jade inside, they would probably be astonished. However, when they found out the type of the jade, it caused a sensation once more because it was the top-level Fulishu jade. The worker had been working in this industry for at least 7 years, but he had never cut out a single piece of top-level jade, which was the reason why he was so excited. If his boss was going to fire him because of that, he wouldn't say a word. What? Did I hear it right? A top-level Fulishu jade. Wang Hongming almost passed out. Although the Wang family didn't lack jade, it was rare to find high-level and top-level jade. Especially the top-level jade. They had to cut out over 1,000 raw materials to get a piece of top-level jade during these years. But Gu Ning easily cut out 2 pieces of high-level jade and a single piece of top-level jade from his own store, which made his eyes green. After the 10th jade was cut out, Gu Ning looked to Wang Hongming. Master Wang, I think the result of the bet is pretty clear now. Would you prefer to transfer the money to me, or give a check? Grandpa? Wang Xinyan wanted to stop her grandpa, but before she could finish, Wang Hongming gave her an angry glance. She then closed her mouth at once. Wang Hongming was extremely unwilling to do so, but it was too late to deny it, so he had to transfer the money to Guning. The crowd burst into discussion again. Miss Tang is so awesome. How can she be so lucky and able at the same time? Does she have a superpower and know that there is jade inside? I think that she must have jade eyes which can see the inside of raw materials. People started to guess because it was so shocking. However, they were all ordinary people and no one really believed that Guning had jade eyes. Wang Hongming was in a rage now, not because he just lost 20 million yuan, but because Guning took so much valuable, even priceless jade out of his store. That jade was worth far more than 20 million yuan. Does she really have a superpower or jade eyes? Wang Hongming thought to himself, but he soon denied it. He couldn't accept this ridiculous idea. The last person that Wang Hongming wanted to see in this world right now was Guning, but he didn't leave right away, because he was curious how many pieces of jade this woman could cut out, and he was also interested in the Fulishu jade. Although Wang Hongming was an influential figure in Citytung, and many people wouldn't compete against him for the Fulishu jade, the jewelry businessmen couldn't care less about him. All they wanted was jade. And the rule was that the most generous buyer got the jade. The Fulishu jade wasn't small, so its initial bid price was very high. 50 million yuan. 60 million yuan. 320 million yuan. In the end, Wang Hongming got the Fulishu jade at the price of 320 million yuan. He decided to transfer the money again. Wang Hongming now had mixed emotions, because he paid a fortune for a piece of jade out of his own raw materials. It was so unusual. If he had cut out the jade himself, he wouldn't pay a cent for it. Unfortunately, he wasn't lucky enough. Grandpa, why did you buy her jade? Wang Xinyan was almost 20 years old, but was spoiled rotten already. She was so emotional and couldn't make good judgments from the perspective of a businessman. Rong, send her back now. Wang Hongming was in a bad mood now, but Wang Xinyan kept complaining beside his ears, which annoyed him greatly, so he asked the driver to take her back first. Grandpa. Wang Xinyan was reluctant to leave. Go back home now. Wang Hongming lost his patience. Wang Xinyan didn't resist anymore, and left with the driver. While she was walking out, she glared at Guning with great force. She hated her to death now. However, Guning didn't care at all, because she knew that Wang Xinyan could barely compete with her. Someone posted the news on the internet again. Its title was Latest News. The Queen of Jade cut out 10 pieces of jade till now. One of them is Fulishu jade, which was sold at the price of 320 million yuan. There were pictures of the jade attached to the post. The news caused an even bigger sensation this time. Even the members from the Jade Association swarmed into the store without delay. Jade of the glass and violet types was hard to find, but not rare, while Fulishu jade was truly a rarity. They only heard that someone cut out Fulishu jade once in a few years. Many people were also green with envy because of the amount of money that Guning had made. They all dreamed to own that enormous amount of money themselves. The Queen of Jade was well known online right now. Miss Tang, do you plan to cut out the rest of the raw materials of yours? Someone asked with great anticipation. There were 7 representatives of different jewelry companies in the store of the Wang family, but only several of them had gotten 1 or 2 pieces of jade, which was barely enough. Although they were jealous of Guning's unusual luck and ability to cut out so many pieces of jade, they were more willing to maintain a good relationship with her for their future cooperation. Sure. Guning gave them an affirmative answer. She intended to aggravate Wang Hongming, and she wouldn't stop when she had just began. The following raw materials which were about to be cut out were from room A. One of them already showed green through the window, so everyone believed that there would be a medium-level jade inside. But to their astonishment, its color changed after only 1 cut. It's purple. How come it's purple? The worker almost shouted with excitement. What? Purple? Isn't it green?
No.
It's a high-level jade of the violet type. What? The high-level violet? Wow. The crowd was shocked. It was beyond their imagination that there was actually a purple jade inside. However, no one was more regretful than Wang Hongming. He was in despair now. All the priceless jade was bought by a stranger, and he lost a fortune within a day. He had thought that there was merely a medium-level jade in the raw material with a window, so he didn't pay much attention to it. However, there was something more exciting to come. Another worker removed the outer layer and started cleaning the second raw material with a window. The jade with a bright green color came into people's sight. It was flawless and smooth, and was jade of the old pit glass type. Wang Hongming was struck dumb. Why? How could it be possible? He kept thinking to himself. Gu Ning was now almost a goddess in their eyes, because her judgments were 100% accurate concerning stone gambling. No one else could do that before her. Thinking of that, Wang Hongming couldn't accept the truth. His anger and disappointment were burning. I don't think that this is violet jade. It has to be the violet jade with green flowers, someone said in shock when the jade which was assumed to be violet was more than a half cut out. What? Violet jade with green flowers? Another man said with amazement. Violet jade with green flowers was a kind of top-level jade. Although it couldn't compare with the king's green, it was much more valuable than the jade of the old pit glass type. Exactly. I heard that someone cut out a piece of violet jade with green flowers 5 years ago. It weighed 12 pounds and was sold at the price of 1 billion yuan. I think this one probably weighs around 8 pounds, and it is worth at least 500 million yuan. A man added. Everyone was astonished by its price, but at the same time, some were also mad that the man revealed its real price already, because in that case they couldn't deliberately bid a lower price for it. However, even now, no one was more astonished than Wang Hongming. He had controlled himself to stay calm for so long, and now suddenly he sensed his blood was rising in his throat. He immediately gave his secretary a hint and walked away with him without delay. Gu Ning noticed every detail of Wang Hongming's reaction. She understood that he had gotten too mad and finally lost control now. The minute that Wang Hongming walked out of the store, he spat a mouthful of blood and almost fell. Luckily, his secretary supported him on time. Meanwhile, his chauffeur came back, so he drove Wang Hongming to the hospital at once. Gu Ning used her jade eyes to see what was happening outside, but she had no sympathy for Wang Hongming at all, because he deserved it. She had no intention to hurt him in the very beginning. If Wang Hongming let it go after that, she wouldn't behave against him again. But if he was going to revenge himself on her, Gu Ning absolutely wouldn't yield. In fact, from what Gu Ning already knew about the Wang family, she understood that Wang Hongming wouldn't let it go easily. Some people on the street saw Wang Hongming spitting blood and began to discuss it. Hey, I saw Master Wang spitting blood on the street just then. What? Master Wang spat blood. It's understandable. He lost so many pieces of valuable jade within a day. Exactly. If I were him, I couldn't accept it either. It's so shocking, by the way. Who is this Tang Aining? She is so unbearable. Indeed, I'm so jealous of her. There were more people who arrived after they read the news. They only knew that someone continuously cut out many pieces of jade, but didn't know the types of those jade. To their amazement, they had the rare chance to see the jade of the violet with green flowers and old pit glass types. They all believed that they had to be in a dream because it was too good to be true. Other than the shock, admiration and jealousy, Gu Ning also sensed hostility from the people around her. She had made an enormous amount of money within a short time, which was quite noticeable. There were many thieves and robbers around this street all the time, because the street of stone gambling was where rich people gathered. However, Gu Ning didn't care. She had already prepared well for it, since she chose to cut out raw materials in public. If those thieves and robbers dared to attack her, they better be mentally prepared to bear the result. More representatives of jewelry companies were busy chatting with Gu Ning and exchanged name cards with her. She already had 16 name cards in her hands till now, including 13 domestic jewelry companies, which covered 2/3 of the popular jewelry brands in this country. And the other 3 were international jewelry companies. Zhao Yefeng also came to the store like everyone else, but he didn't recognize Gu Ning. And Gu Ning treated him the same way as others in order to not expose her real identity. Zhang Deqing arrived later as well, along with several old men at the same age. They were more than shocked when they found out the types of the jade. An old man came to Guning and asked with excitement as well as politeness, "Are you Miss Tang who cut out all the jade?" Actually, he recognized her at first sight but still asked the question out of politeness. "Yes, I am. May I know your name?"
Kuning Repliet politeli.
The old man was slightly surprised by Guning's good manners. He thought that she would be very proud or even arrogant after she cut out so many pieces of valuable jade, but now he had a better impression of Guning. "Miss Tang, so nice to meet you. I'm the head of the Jade Association in City Tung Zhang Duquan, and your extremely outstanding ability of stone gambling impresses me deeply. I hope that we can have a chance to communicate with each other." Zhang Duquan didn't hide his appreciation and admiration towards Guning, and he didn't show any hatred or jealousy at all. He only admired Guning for her ability of stone gambling, instead of her wealth. Only upright people valued ability and talent over money. Zhang Duquan was Zhang Duqing's younger brother, and as the head of Jade Association, Zhang Duquan was also excellent at stone gambling. He had cut out 3 pieces of jade out of 5 raw materials before. Although it had only happened once, he had won everyone's respect already, because it had never happened before him, but now Guning appeared all of a sudden. "So nice to meet you too, Mr. Zhang. It's my honor to be able to communicate with you," Guning replied modestly. She wouldn't reject such a kind and respected man. And the point of cooperation was a win-win. "Miss Tang, would you please tell me how you make judgments about whether there is jade in the raw materials? I had a look of those raw materials in your cart, but some of them don't show any signs of jade," Zhang Duquan asked Guning. The outer layer of the raw materials is a weathered leather shell, which makes it impossible to see whether there is jade or its species. It is said that songhua, python stripe, moss and other characteristics are of great help to judge the internal condition of the raw materials. I don't deny it, because they're indeed helpful in most cases, but it's also possible to cut out jade from raw materials without songhua, python stripe, moss, or other characteristics. One's luck is also very important. Therefore, I basically choose raw materials according to my instinct. Fortunately, I have good instinct and luck, Ning answered. Well put. Zhang Duquan couldn't agree more. He understood that it was also possible to cut jade out of raw materials without songhua, python stripe, moss or other characteristics, but no one dared to take the chance because it was too risky. However, he was still amazed by this woman's unbelievable luck. He had to believe it for now, because he couldn't find any other reasonable explanation. In addition, the woman indeed seemed confident and able. Gu Ning also noticed that Master Tang was standing with Lu Mingfei, the representative of Dihao Jewelry, who had exchanged name cards with her. Dihao Jewelry originated from City B and was the biggest high-end jewelry brand in this country. It was one of the 4 first-line jewelry brands domestically and was famous internationally too. There were only 3 domestic jewelry companies which were well known internationally, and the Tang family's company was one of them, but this Tang family wasn't the Tang family that Tang Aining was from. Gu Ning glanced at Master Tang, seeing that Lu Mingfei respected Master Tang a lot as if Master Tang was his boss. Is Master Tang the boss or the management of Dihao Jewelry? Gu Ning thought to herself. Dihao Jewelry belonged to the Tang Huang Group, and the Tang family was one of the 4 most influential families in City B. The Tang family was more than a normal super-rich family because it was powerful in both business and politics, thus few people dared to act against it. Gu Ning believed that Master Tang must have a close connection with Dihao Jewelry. Anyway, it had nothing to do with her. The violet jade with green flowers was open for bid later. Because a man had already revealed the real price of this violet jade with green flowers, all the businessmen started to bid at a very high price. In the end, the violet jade with green flowers was bought by Dihao Jewelry at the price of 600 million yuan. After that, the old pit glass species was sold at the price of 250 million yuan. Gu Ning continued to cut out the rest of her raw materials and more pieces of jade came out continuously, but she only cut out medium-level jade for sale. The minute that Leng Xiaoting got off the plane at the military division, He told Su Jinshen and the others to keep an eye on their opponents before he came back. Then he abandoned them and left, which surprised Su Jinshen and his other teammates. Wait, what's going on here?
No idea.
I think our boss has been acting strange recently. He is always in a hurry to meet someone. Exactly, he even abandoned us. Is he really in love now? Gu Ning had already told Leng Xiaoting that she would be in the street of stone gambling most of today, so he drove straight to the street. When he parked the car in the parking lot, he called Gu Ning at once. However, it wasn't convenient for Gu Ning to answer his call now, so she texted him. Leng Xiaoting immediately sent her a message back. I have already arrived here at the parking lot on the street of stone gambling. Reading that message, Gu Ning was slightly surprised but soon went back to normal. She understood that he must be free now since he came here in person, so she packed up and left without delay. Gu Ning had only cut out half of her raw materials till now, and there were 30 more with mostly medium-level jade inside. Gu Ning had not only made over 2.3 billion yuan, but also absorbed a lot of power from the jade that she had cut out today. Her telepathic eye space was doubled again, and was 8 square meters in size now. Seeing that Gu Ning was leaving, the jewelry businessmen were all disappointed because many of them hadn't gotten a single piece of jade yet. Gu Ning comforted them. Please don't worry. I'll inform you all within 1 or 2 days once the rest of the raw materials have all been cut out. Hearing that, everyone was excited. Then Gu Ning left the store. Although Wang Hongming was absent, someone told him every detail about what was happening in his store. When he got to know that Tang Aining cut out over 30 pieces of jade continuously and made 2.3 billion yuan till now, he spat blood several times. She had only cut out half of her raw materials and had already made 2.4 billion yuan. Wang Hongming was now fully convinced that the rest of her raw materials all contained jade. Did she take all the raw materials with jade inside from my store? Wang Hongming thought to himself. This time Wang Hongming had a plan to kill Tang Aining. The minute that Gu Ning walked out of the store, she sensed that eyes were fixed on her, but she didn't care. She went straight to a washroom with the box of jade in her hands, then put it into her telepathic eye space. After that, she changed her clothes and removed her makeup swiftly. 10 minutes later, she was back to her normal appearance and left the washroom. There were 3 men pacing back and forth nearby outside of the washroom. They fixed their eyes on the washroom, but failed to recognize Gu Ning because she had already changed. Thus Gu Ning calmly walked away while in their sight. They waited for a long time but Tang Aining still didn't show up. They started to sense that something had to be wrong. It shouldn't take so long for a woman to use a washroom, but they were men and couldn't go inside to check, so they randomly asked another woman to go inside and check for them. However, the woman told them that it was empty without anybody inside. What? It's empty? How is it possible? None of them believed it because Tang Aining never walked out. Are you lying? A man questioned the woman. I'm not. You can check it yourself if you don't believe me, the woman replied. They exchanged a glance with each other. After a few seconds of struggle, one of them said, I'll go check it. He made a round in the ladies' room, but it was indeed empty. They were all struck dumb now. What happened? We've been waiting here the entire time, but she never walked out. Exactly. And there is only one way out of the ladies' room. Did she change her look and we failed to recognize her? Impossible. I didn't see any female with the box in her hands coming out. What exactly happened? Did she disappear for no reason? A man asked, and all of them felt scared but couldn't believe it. What should we do now? A man asked worriedly. Their target disappeared all of a sudden and they would be punished. No idea, another man said resignedly. I think we should check around this area once more. Before Gu Ning walked out of the street of stone gambling, she noticed that there were many people gathered outside of a store which was being damaged by a group of men. What is going on? Who has Boss Zheng offended? It's not Boss Zheng, but his son Zheng Hao isn't able to pay usury one. The usurer can't get the money back, so directly sent people to damage his store. What? Again? Apparently it had happened before. Indeed, this is already the third time this year. Boss Zheng could pay the usury the previous 2 times, but now he can't afford it. Well, I have a deep sympathy for Boss Zheng. His wife passed away at an early age without any children. He loved his wife very much and wasn't willing to marry again. Then he adopted Zheng Hao out of kindness. However, unexpectedly, Zheng Hao is merely a loser who can't achieve anything and destroyed all of Boss Zheng's wealth. Exactly. Zheng Hao is just fooling around and gambles all day. What a shame that Boss Zheng, who is such a good person, has been ruined by his adopted son. I think that his store will probably close in the near future. Zheng Hao is so shameless and useless. Why does Boss Zheng still keep the connection with him? Who knows? Everyone was busy discussing with others. Hearing their discussion, Gu Ning felt sorry for this Boss Zheng too, and also hated Zheng Hao. Stop it, please. Please stop it. I'll pay you back in 2 days. Zheng Peng tried his best to stop the group of men in vain, and he was pushed backwards with great force. It happened too fast for Zheng Peng to react. He immediately lost his balance, falling down, and there were shelves of raw materials behind him. If Zheng Peng knocked straight into those raw materials, he would be badly injured. Without hesitation, Gu Ning pushed the 2 people standing in her way aside, running ahead. Those 2 people almost fell and screamed, but when they found out what was happening in front of their eyes, they were shocked. Gu Ning was very fast but was still a little bit late. Zheng Peng had already hit the shelves with the raw materials placed on them. Many raw materials fell down one after another, and one of them hit Zheng Peng's shoulder while another was falling towards his head. The crowd rounded their eyes with astonishment, and some turned away to avoid the terrible scene. However, right at that moment, a hand grabbed Zheng Peng's arm and immediately pulled him away. Zheng Peng finally escaped the raw materials falling from the shelves. Everyone was amazed, looking at the young girl who was surprisingly agile and had strength to save Zheng Peng's life. Otherwise, Zheng Peng would either be dead or severely injured. Zheng Peng was struck dumb. The men who were damaging the store stopped for a second when they heard the loud noise. They were so close, but none of them had the intention to help Zheng Peng. After seeing what Gu Ning had done, they were all surprised too. However, they saw that Zheng Peng was fine, so they continued smashing objects in the store. Although it had nothing to do with Gu Ning, she was greatly annoyed and attacked those men without delay. She caught the man who stood nearest to her by his shoulder and lifted him off the ground and threw him outside with great force. People were all shocked by the scene. It was beyond their imagination that such a young girl could be so strong. None of the other men in the store realized what was going on before the second man was kicked down onto the floor by Gu Ning. What the F***ck? Just as the man opened his mouth, Gu Ning lifted him up, throwing him away. The second man accidentally fell on the first man, and the first man almost passed out from the pain. The other 2 men finally realized what was going on. They were both shocked to see that their partners were knocked out, then raised the wood sticks in their hands and started attacking Gu Ning in anger. However, this time, before Gu Ning could move, a man dashed in from the outside and threw the other 2 men out of the store within seconds. Everyone was again amazed by this man's beautiful movements and appearance. Are you all right? Ling Xiaoting asked Gu Ning worriedly.
I'm fine, Gu Ning smiled gently.
She wasn't surprised by his sudden appearance, instead she felt touched. What's going on here? Ling Xiaoting asked. Oh, nothing. I just wanted to help this man, Gu Ning answered. Miss, thank you so much for saving my life. Zheng Peng thanked Gu Ning at once. He was still in shock after what just had happened to him. If it hadn't been for Gu Ning, he would have been dead already. My pleasure, Gu Ning said. However, Mr. Zheng, I heard that your adopted son causes you all these troubles. Why don't you cut off the connection with him? Hearing that, Zheng Peng sighed with great force and said resignedly, Actually, I've failed to contact him for a year. He causes trouble outside, but those men all come to me. I don't know how to handle it. If I don't give them money, they'll damage my store. He didn't tell Gu Ning whether he was regretful that he had adopted Zheng Hao, but he made it clear that he wanted to cut off the connection with Zheng Hao. One's kindness had limitations. Zheng Peng had brought Zheng Hao up and had now lost all of his wealth because of him, which already crossed the bottom line. Why don't you call the police? Gu Ning asked. I did. However, they are members of the Qing gang, and even the police don't dare to annoy them, Zheng Peng replied. He was only a common citizen without power and support, thus no one was willing to help him. Speaking of the Qing gang, Zheng Peng suddenly realized that it could be dangerous. Oh, they are from the Qing gang and you injured them. You could get in trouble. I think you better leave right now. It's fine. Gu Ning understood that Zheng Peng was being kind, but she wasn't afraid of the Qing gang at all. Don't you dare leave. You injured us and the Qing gang won't let you get away with it. At this time the men who had been knocked down on the ground threatened Gu Ning and Lung, shouting, Gee, do you think that everyone is afraid of the Qing gang? Gu Ning sneered with disdain. You. They didn't expect that Gu Ning wasn't scared at all, but they believed that she was just pretending. If you're not afraid, stay here. Apparently they were going to ask for support. I won't leave because you have to pay for what you've done. Mr. Zheng, please calculate your loss and let them pay the compensation, Gu Ning said. Miss. Zheng Peng was surprised. He didn't dare ask them for compensation at all. He was more afraid that they would get revenge on him. What? How dare you ask us to pay the compensation? Those men from the Qing gang were mad. I don't think that up to you, Gu Ning sneered once more. Since she had already given Zheng Peng a helping hand, she would not leave him in a mess. In fact, she decided to help him solve the problem completely. Otherwise, those hoodlums would vent their anger on Zheng Peng if Gu Ning and Lung shouting were gone. In addition, it wasn't Zheng Peng's duty to pay for Zheng Hao's bad behavior. Tell me you and your leaders' names, Gu Ning said to one of the men. I'm Zhao San and my leader is Zhou Yi, who is an important figure in the Qing gang, a man said proudly, because he didn't believe that Gu Ning was able to deal with them. Great, you can go away now, Gu Ning said. What? Those hoodlums didn't expect that Gu Ning would change the topic so quickly. Go away right now. Otherwise I'll kick you away, Gu Ning snapped with a cold glance. Facing the great pressure from Gu Ning, those hoodlums trembled in horror, escaping away without delay. However, before they left, one of them threatened, It's not the end yet and we'll be back. All the people around them felt sorry for Zheng Peng, but they could do nothing to help him. Those hoodlums were from the Qing gang after all. After Zhao San's group was gone, the onlookers dispersed too. Well, I think that I will have to close my store and leave Citytung now, Zheng Peng sighed sadly. He was truly frightened this time, and he had already had the idea to close his store, because his store could barely stay afloat now. Then he said to Gu Ning again, Miss, I can tell that you're not afraid of the Qing gang, but the Qing gang isn't some organization that you can have bad blood with. I think you better leave now. Mr. Zheng, don't worry. Since I'm already involved, I'll help you solve the problem, Gu Ning said. What? Zheng Peng was quite surprised. He didn't have any hope that someone would be willing to help him out of this mess. Although Zheng Peng was indeed in need of help, he didn't want other innocent people to be involved, so he declined. Miss, I understand that you're kind and warm-hearted, but you could be in danger once you annoy the Qing gang. Zheng Peng didn't want her to be in danger because of him, which proved that he was an upright man. Actually, Gu Ning had her own plan too. She was looking for an upright man to help her manage the jade provider that she was going to open, and Zheng Peng was a great choice, but she still needed time to know more about Zheng Peng. However, since he was able to run such a big store, he must be able to some extent. Gu Ning made up her mind to purchase raw materials herself so that she could get all the raw materials that contain jade. If the Qing gang is going to get revenge on you, do you really think that you can get rid of it? Gu Ning asked. Hearing that, Zheng Peng was struck dumb and his face immediately turned pale. Indeed, if the Qing gang was determined to get revenge on him, he absolutely couldn't escape from it. The Qing gang's influence stretched across this whole country. Gu Ning thought for a while before she said, Mr. Zheng, if you're going to close this store, I would like to hire you as my employee in my jade provider company. What do you say? What? Zheng Peng was surprised. This young girl runs her own business? Gu Ning took out a piece of name card from her backpack, handing it to Zhang Peng. This is my name card. I've heard many positive comments of you from the citizens around here. I believe that you're also an excellent businessman, and I lack an aide like you right now. If you're willing to work for me, we can have a deeper conversation. Zhang Peng didn't answer immediately, but hesitated for a while. If you don't mind that I may cause you trouble from the Qing gang, of course I'm willing to work for you. Zhang Peng was a sophisticated man. Although he was worried that Gu Ning might get in trouble because of him, he sensed from her attitude that she really wasn't afraid of them. Either she was from a powerful family, or she had some type of relationship with the Qing gang. Either way, she was truly not afraid of the Qing gang, so he trusted her. In the beginning, Zhang Peng thought that Gu Ning probably wanted to help him, so she offered to let him work in her company. However, Gu Ning then told him that she appreciated his ability and character, which was quite inspiring and encouraging. Therefore, Zhang Peng accepted her offer. He wasn't worried that Gu Ning could be trying to deceive him because she had saved his life, and he was willing to follow her lead. Very well, then Gu Ning suddenly stopped because she thought of Leng Xiaoting, who had been ignored for so long. She felt a little guilty looking at Leng Xiaoting. Leng Xiaoting noticed and said, "Don't worry, I'm free today." In fact, Leng Xiaoting badly wanted to be alone with Gu Ning, but he understood that she needed to work. Gu Ning felt moved due to Leng Xiaoting's consideration. She also wanted to be alone with him, but business was more important right now. After that, Zhang Peng guided Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting up to the second floor. Zhang Peng's store was 40 square meters in size with 2 stories, and he normally discussed business with special guests on the second floor. Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting sat down, while Zhang Peng went to prepare cups of tea for them. "Uncle Zhang, the thing is that I'm going to open a jade provider," Gu Ning said. Since Zhang Peng agreed to work for her now, there was no need for Gu Ning to call him Mr. Zhang like a stranger. "However, I'm still a student right now, and I need a qualified manager. I think that you are an excellent choice. You don't need to worry about the source of raw materials or clients, because I'll handle them. All you need to do is manage the company well." "What? A jade provider?" Zhang Peng was shocked. A jade provider required a large amount of raw materials, while stone gambling was a highly risky business. It was hard to cut out jade, let alone a large amount of it. Otherwise, there would be many jade providers in the market instead of just a few. Moreover, it was even harder to cut out high-quality jade. "Yes, I have my own skills of stone gambling, and it's not difficult for me to cut out jade. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had the idea to open a jade provider. I trust you, so I will tell you the secret, and I only hope that you can be loyal to me," Gu Ning said. Her own skills of stone gambling? Hearing that, Zhang Peng was surprised. This young girl was totally beyond his imagination. Zhang Peng then said with sincerity, "Miss Gu, since I'm willing to follow your lead, you absolutely have my loyalty. I think that I can prove it in the coming days." Indeed, action spoke louder than words. Although Gu Ning was willing to trust Zhang Peng, it didn't mean that he was completely trustworthy. If he wanted to win her complete trust, he had to prove his loyalty in the future. "Could you please tell me your source of raw materials?" Gu Ning asked. "There are 7 raw material providers in Citytung, and the Zhang family, the Wang family as well as the Lu family are well known for their stability and size. We need to sign contracts with them, and once we sign the contract, we can't cooperate with other raw material providers anymore. As for me, I purchase raw materials from the Wang family," Zhang Peng replied. The Wang family? Gu Ning suddenly had an idea. Although she hadn't signed the contract with the Zhang family yet, they established their alliance already. The Zhang family would keep supplying raw materials for her. However, all she wanted was raw materials with jade inside. And the Zhang family couldn't satisfy her need. She couldn't take all the raw materials that contained jade away from the Zhang family after all, but the Wang family was different. There was already a grudge between her and the Wang family, and she naturally wouldn't be considerate for them. Gu Ning thought for a while before she opened her mouth. "Uncle Zhang, please take me to purchase a batch of raw materials from the Wang family under your name tomorrow." "No problem," Shengpeng answered. Oh, by the way, do you own this store or do you rent it? Guning asked. She planned to use this store as a reception. I own it, Shengpeng replied. Would you mind leasing this store to me as a reception for our company? Guning asked. Of course not. Shengpeng answered with alacrity. And do you know where there are factories available for renting? It's not appropriate to cut out a large amount of raw materials here, Guning said. Factories were safer than the street of stone gambling too. Sure. There is a factory area a kilometer away from here to the right. The area is equipped with high-level safety facilities, but the rent is a little high, Shengpeng said. As long as it's safe, I don't care about its price, Guning said. A factory wouldn't be more expensive than the raw materials. Oh, how many workers do you have in your store? Guning asked. 3. One is an accountant, and the other 2 are responsible for cutting raw materials, Shengpeng answered. Please ask them whether they're willing to join my company. I can pay them a good salary, Guning said. Sure I will, Shengpeng said. Actually, he knew that they would agree even without having to ask. Guning and Shengpeng finished their discussion for now, and they would talk more about the factory later after they signed the contract. After that, they signed the contract for leasing the store, and Guning transferred a year's rent to Shengpeng. She needed to register her company first before she was going to be able to sign the labor contract. When they walked out of Shengpeng's store, Leng Xiaoting said to Guning, Let me help you with the registration. Great. Guning didn't reject. It would take a long time if she went to do it herself. Guning then handed all of the documents to Leng Xiaoting. The name of her company was Colorful Jade Provider. She had done her homework beforehand, and the name wasn't registered yet. It was 5:30 p.m. already, so Leng Xiaoting planned to deal with the registration tomorrow. Guning along with Leng Xiaoting went to go eat. However, before they left the street of stone gambling, Guning received Qiao Ye's call. She didn't realize that they were still in the store until now. Qiao Ye told Guning that some people had caused trouble in their store. Guning was displeased and went straight back to her store. Leng Xiaoting followed Guning going back to her store. When he saw Gao Yi and Qiao Ye, he gave them a cold look, which made Gao Yi and Qiao Ye feel stressed. Gao Yi and Qiao Ye didn't know Leng Xiaoting, but they sensed that the man knew them and stared at them unkindly. Guning also noticed that, and she immediately interrupted them. They both work for me. Leng Xiaoting drew his look back, but remained silent. And he's my boyfriend. Please don't worry. Guning comforted them. Gao Yi and Qiao Ye felt a little relieved. Gao Yi and Qiao Ye didn't regard Guning as a young girl, so it wasn't surprising that she had a boyfriend. Her boyfriend looked so powerful. From their rich experience of years, they were aware that the man was much stronger than them. However, no matter how strong or powerful he was, they only cared that he wasn't threatening them. Guning's sight fell on 3 men who were seated, trembling in fear in the corner. All of them were black and blue. Apparently, Gao Yi and Qiao Ye had already taught them a lesson. Boss, they claimed that the Wang family sent them here, Qiao Ye said seriously. The Wang family? Without a doubt, it had to be Wang Hongming, because Guning only had bitter conflict with him. She knew that Wang Hongming wouldn't let it go easily, so she wasn't surprised now, but Leng Xiaoting was mad. He gave those men an icy glance, and those men instantly felt threatened. Let alone those men, even Guning along with Qiao Ye and Gao Yi thought that it was frightening. Guning pulled Leng Xiaoting's hand at once. It's fine. Leng Xiaoting held Guning's hand in his palm and relaxed. Let them go. It's no big deal, but if the Wang family dares to do it again, we'll fight back then, Guning said. It wasn't because she was kind, but she thought that it wasn't necessary to annoy the Wang family just because of this small trouble. Then she looked to those men and warned, Tell the man behind you that if it happens again, we'll fight back. Now get lost. Hearing that, the 3 men escaped away without delay. Gao Yi, Qiao Ye, please stay here for a while longer. I need to find a suitable factory right now, and I'll rent it once I find it. Then we can move all the stuff there, in case the Wang family tries to cause us more trouble, Guning ordered. Although she wasn't afraid of the Wang family, she didn't like trouble either. Thus she had to settle the factory as soon as possible. No problem. Gao Yi and Xiaoya replied. Then Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting left for the factory that Zheng Peng had mentioned. It wasn't early now, but it wasn't late neither. On their way, Gu Ning finally had time to call Siti Yi. Leng Xiaoting felt slightly uncomfortable, but he understood that it was better to let Siti Yi handle the mess caused by members of the Qin gang. Siti Yi answered Gu Ning's call and said, "Hi, what's up?" "Well, actually something terrible just happened, and I do hope that you can help me." It was a little embarrassing for Gu Ning to bother Siti Yi. "What happened?" Siti Yi asked. "The thing is," Gu Ning briefly told Siti Yi what had happened in Zheng Peng's store and that Zheng Peng now worked for her. "Would you please help me talk to the senior management of the Qin gang and stop causing Zheng Peng trouble in City Tung? He is indeed innocent," Gu Ning said, revealing the fact that she already knew that Siti Yi was the head of the Qin gang. Although Siti Yi normally didn't bother himself with such trifles, he was annoyed when Gu Ning was involved. "Sure, I'll handle it," Siti Yi answered with alacrity. Gu Ning thanked him before she hung up. "How did you meet those two?" Leng Xiaoting asked Gu Ning this time and sounded serious. The two were of course Gao Yi and Xiaoya. Gu Ning understood that Leng Xiaoting was worried about her safety, so she didn't hide the truth but just omitted some details. They had been chased by killers and badly injured. I rescued them and so they work for me now. I already got a hacker to remove their names from the wanted list, so they're safe now. In actual fact, Leng Xiaoting didn't know much about Gu Ning. He only knew her family background and some of her personal information. Thus he had always been curious about why she was so excellent at kung fu and had expert marksmanship. Her professional ability was even better than senior members of the special forces. Moreover, her outstanding business acumen and skills of stone gambling also impressed Leng Xiaoting. She even casually got a hacker to remove their names from the wanted list. Leng Xiaoting wasn't confident that the most skillful programmer in the Red Flame could do that. He believed that only several of the top hackers in this country were able to do such a thing. As Gu Ning's boyfriend, he naturally wanted to know more about her. But he knew that it was her privacy. If she had no intention to tell him, he wouldn't ask. Gu Ning, in fact, knew very little about Leng Xiaoting as well. She only knew that he was a military officer, a major general, who came from the capital, but she knew nothing about his family. They didn't ask each other for more information because it wasn't the right time yet. Although they were boyfriend and girlfriend, they hadn't been together for very long. Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting arrived at the factory area within minutes. This factory area was built less than 5 years ago, and it was still relatively new. It was large and divided into many small areas. There was an independent gate to each small area. To get through the gate, one had to have a pass or an ID card. And there were at least 4 to 8 factory buildings which belonged to one company or several companies in each area. Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting decided to check whether there were factories available for renting. Fortunately, there were many empty factories. Although Gu Ning only needed a large room, she had the intention to expand her business, so a large room wasn't enough. In the end, she chose a whole factory building which was 400 square meters in size with 3 floors and an underground room. In addition, it was for sale now and its price was 36 million yuan. Gu Ning thought that it wasn't a bad idea to buy this whole building, so she planned to take a look. After that, she called the seller's number. The seller immediately came over when he received Gu Ning's call. He did not live far from this factory area, so he arrived after 10 minutes. Under the guidance of the seller, Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting followed him in walking through the building. There was a garage which could accommodate 4 cars along with an empty warehouse on the first floor. And the 100 square meter large office area was on the second floor. There were 3 offices, a meeting room, a reception, a washroom, a pantry in the office area, and an empty warehouse took up the rest of the second floor. On the third floor, there was a 100 square meter large canteen and another empty warehouse on the other side. The building had an elevator from the underground room to the third floor for the convenience of delivering goods. Gu Ning was satisfied. Since she liked it, she didn't hesitate to buy this building. However, the real estate bureau was about to get off work, so she had to wait for tomorrow to finish the legal procedure. Therefore, she signed the contract with the seller and paid a deposit of 100,000 yuan first. And the seller handed the key to Gu Ning. Gu Ning then got the pass which she could use to enter this small factory area. Employees who worked here had to have a pass. After settling the factory building, Gu Ning called Gao Yi at once. She told him to prepare a car and load it with the raw materials. She would come back to them and guide them to this factory area later. At the same time, the name of Tang Aining and what she had done caused a huge sensation in both Citytung and the domestic jewelry industry. Some doubted its authenticity because it was too shocking and too unbearable to be true. In a luxury apartment in the capital, a young woman who was around 24 years old was lying on the sofa playing on her phone. She was wearing a tight black lace dress which accentuated her perfect body. She had long dark red curly hair with heavy makeup and looked charming. She was surfing the internet, and suddenly a piece of news came into her sight. She was scared and jumped up from the sofa in anger after she noticed the name Tang Aining. She isn't dead? The woman lost her appetite to read the contents, but enlarged the pictures in an attempt to identify whether the female was Tang Aining. When she found out that the person in the pictures didn't resemble Tang Aining at all, the woman was greatly relieved. It's just the same name. She thought to herself. Yashin, what's wrong? A man who was around 30 years old walked out of a bedroom. He noticed that the woman looked a little panicked. The man was in a black suit and had a handsome face. The woman was exactly Tang Aining's half-sister, Tang Yashin, while the man was Qi Ziyue who had schemed against Tang Aining along with Tang Yashin. Oh, nothing. I just read some shocking news, Tang Yashin replied. Although she was sure that the Tang Aining in the pictures wasn't her half-sister, she still panicked for no reason. Besides, she had an unusual feeling that Tang Aining wasn't dead. However, she refused to believe it, because they had witnessed Tang Aining's body being burned in fire. What news? Qi Ziyue walked over. Tang Yashin gave her phone to Qi Ziyue. The man was also shocked by the name Tang Aining and grabbed her phone without delay. He ignored the content directly like Tang Yashin had done, and enlarged the pictures to check the female in them. Qi Ziyue relaxed as well after he figured out that this Tang Aining wasn't the one that they knew, but he was amazed by the content afterwards. What? This woman cut out over 30 pieces of jade continuously? It's so incredible. What? Hearing that, Tang Yashin was shocked too. Although the Tang family wasn't involved in the jewelry industry, they heard a lot about stone gambling. It was a highly risky business, but this woman could cut out over 30 pieces of jade one after another. They doubted its authenticity but were still amazed. In City Ji, a friend of Master Bai's called him after the shocking news. They were both jade lovers, so they shared a lot of news concerning jade. After hearing the news, Master Bai was more than shocked now. He believed that the woman was Gu Ning because she was the only one who had such an outstanding ability of stone gambling that he knew of till now. Master Bai finished the conversation with his friend in a hurry and looked it up on the internet. When Master Bai saw those pictures, he was sure that the woman was Gu Ning. Although the two didn't resemble at all, he had met Gu Ning after she changed her clothing, thus he was certain that he was right. This girl is truly unbelievable. Master Bai thought to himself. How come her judgments are so correct every time? Master Bai called Gu Ning at once. Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting were on the way back to the street of stone gambling at this time. Seeing that the caller was Master Bai, Gu Ning understood that he must have read the news.
Grandpa Bai, Gu Ning side.
Hi, I heard the Queen of Jade has cut out over 30 pieces of jade in Citytung. It was you, right? Master Bai asked. Yes. Gu Ning didn't hide the truth. Jesus. Master Bai was shocked. You really amazed me this time. It's so unbearable. And why didn't you leave the high-quality jade for me? I can pay you. Master Bai was a little mad. Gu Ning didn't know what to say but tried to explain. Grandpa Bai, please don't worry. I've already saved many pieces of high-quality jade for you. They're even better than those I've cut out in Citytung. In fact, Gu Ning had several raw materials which contain jade with thicker power than the top-level jade she had already cut out. Really? That will be so nice. When will you be City G again? Master Bai was thrilled and couldn't wait to meet Gu Ning. I've been busy recently, and I'm afraid that I won't be coming to City G until the holidays are over, Gu Ning answered. Fine. Master Bai was disappointed. Gu Ning chatted with Master Bai for a while longer. Master Bai reminded her to be careful because Citytung was well known for its high crime rate and was located at the border of the country. Although Gu Ning wasn't an ordinary girl and was excellent at kung fu, she should still take good care of herself. Master Bai called Master Yen and Master Fu without delay after he hung up the call with Gu Ning. Master Yen and Master Fu were also shocked, but Master Bai told them that Gu Ning was busy, so they didn't call Gu Ning directly. Gu Ning went to Zheng Peng's store later. Zheng Peng had already sold the rest of the raw materials to other shops at a low price. There were 2 machines left in the store, so Gu Ning directly took it, along with her raw materials, to the factory building. Zheng Peng told Gu Ning that those hoodlums from the Qing gang had come to his store and apologized to him. Gu Ning believed in Zheng Peng's character, but she still reminded him to be loyal to her. Otherwise, the Qing gang could cause him more trouble. Zheng Peng was clearly aware of that, and he would never betray Gu Ning. Then Gu Ning transferred 500,000 yuan to Zheng Peng for the redecoration of this store. They would make alterations to this store and paint the walls. The counter would be kept where it was, and the pantry as well as the lounge would be set to the side of the counter. Gu Ning told Zheng Peng to buy a whole new set of sofas with more seats. In Gu Ning's eyes, furnishing was very important, because it left the first impression on guests. The shopboard would also be changed into colorful jade provider office. Those small changes were finished within a day. After that, Gu Ning told Gao Yi and Xiaoya to put the raw materials along with the machines onto the second floor of the factory building. It was already 7 p.m. when they finished placing the raw materials correctly. Gu Ning told Gao Yi and Xiaoya to guard the factory tonight, and that they would change the locks tomorrow. Gao Yi and Xiaoya of course wouldn't disobey Gu Ning's order. There were supermarkets and diners in this factory area, so Gao Yi and Xiaoya went to dine together in a small restaurant and bought daily necessities in a supermarket. There were plenty of rooms in the factory building, so they stayed in the same room for tonight. What do you want to eat now? Leng Xiaoting asked Gu Ning after they left the factory area. Well, since we're in Citytung, we have to try its specialties.
Gu Ning replied.
Sure, Leng Xiaoting said. They weren't familiar with Citytung, so they followed the GPS, driving to a famous local restaurant. Of course, they made a reservation on the phone before they went there. The restaurant was extremely popular, but it wasn't big and only had 10 private rooms along with 10 tables in the hall. Thus it was hard to get a reservation from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. when most people had dinner. And the restaurant was always full of people. Luckily, Gu Ning reserved the final private room and they would arrive there after 10 minutes. Don't you need to fulfill your task? Why do you still have time to be with me? Gu Ning asked Leng Xiaoting. Well, actually I didn't need to join them this time, but because of you I came here. Leng Xiaoting told Gu Ning the truth and she was touched. Where will you stay tonight? Gu Ning asked. Somehow she felt nervous and anticipated the answer. She had to admit that she was looking forward to spending the whole night with him. I'll stay with you, Leng Xiaoting said naturally. Gu Ning flushed a little and didn't know what to say next. Gu Ning's silence made Leng Xiaoting think that she was mad. He was anxious and asked, Aren't you willing to stay with me? Of course I am, Gu Ning said at once. Hearing that, Leng Xiaoting relaxed. A few minutes later they arrived, and the hall was filled with people. Many were even waiting outside for empty seats. This small restaurant wasn't a fancy hotel at all, but it had its own special style of decoration. Many rich people also came here due to its delicious food. Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting went straight to their reserved private room. However, just as they walked into the passage, they heard a noisy argument from inside the private room. Miss Wang, I'm sorry. This private room has already been reserved. Please wait for a little while longer. The hotel manager said politely.
No.
I don't care who reserved it. I want it now, a female voice said arrogantly. Gu Ning immediately recognized the voice. The female was Wang Xinyan. To Gu Ning's surprise, they met each other in an argument once more. Wang Xinyan enjoyed grabbing things from others so much that she just grabbed the raw material from Gu Ning today. And now she tried to grab Gu Ning's reserved private room. "Miss Wang, please don't cause us trouble," the manager said resignedly. "How come I'm the one who is causing trouble here? I'm the daughter of the Wang family. It's your honor that I choose to dine here. If you dare to stop me again, I can make you close your restaurant," Wang Xinyan threatened. "Exactly. How dare you act against the Wang family?" Several boys and girls who were standing along with Wang Xinyan supported her orally. "You!" The manager was annoyed but indeed didn't dare to argue with her any longer. At this time Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting walked in. "We have reserved this private room. Do you want to grab it from us?" "So what?" Wang Xinyan looked over saying with disdain. However, when her gaze fell on Leng Xiaoting, she was stunned by his extraordinarily handsome appearance. "He's so handsome," Wang Xinyan thought to herself. She had never met such a handsome man before. Even those male idols or stars were barely comparable to him. Gu Ning understood that Leng Xiaoting's appearance was super attractive to girls wherever he went, but she was uncomfortable when those girls fixed their eyes at Leng Xiaoting. Anyway, Leng Xiaoting was her boyfriend, and those girls could do nothing about it. However, when Wang Xinyan made eyes at Leng Xiaoting, Gu Ning was extremely displeased, because she already disliked Wang Xinyan. Seeing Leng Xiaoting, Wang Xinyan forgot to argue with Gu Ning, but stepped towards Leng Xiaoting directly. "Hi, nice to meet you. My name is Wang Xinyan. I'm the daughter of the Wang family, which is one of the 4 most powerful families in Citytung," Wang Xinyan said with great pride while holding out her hand to Leng Xiaoting. However, Leng Xiaoting remained expressionless, as if Wang Xinyan didn't exist. Wang Xinyan felt embarrassed and snapped, "Hey! I'm talking to you. Are you dumb?" Leng Xiaoting still ignored her and stayed calm, but Gu Ning couldn't tolerate it anymore. She squinted and warned, "Mind your words. Stay away from my man ****. How dare you say that to me?" Wang Xinyan was irritated. "You deserve it," Gu Ning said. "You!" Wang Xinyan was mad. "What do you think you are? How dare you humiliate Miss Wang? Do you know how powerful the Wang family is?" A girl who was with Wang Xinyan threatened. Hearing that, Leng Xiaoting finally reacted. He gave the girl a cold, sharp glance, and the girl was frightened. She could barely breathe now. All the other people who were with Wang Xinyan felt threatened. This man wasn't someone that they could mess with. "The Wang family? I don't care about the Wang family. No matter who you are, if you dare to humiliate Ningning, I'll unseat your whole family," Leng Xiaoting said icily, which scared everyone a lot. Their first reaction wasn't to doubt Leng Xiaoting's words. They were truly afraid that he would unseat the Wang family, because Leng Xiaoting had an air of power. Wang Xinyan had always been arrogant, and was used to being flattered by people around her, so she didn't believe that the man before her eyes could hurt the Wang family. "Who do you think you are? Do you really think that you have the ability to unseat the Wang family?" However, unconsciously, Wang Xinyan wasn't confident while she was saying that. She added, "It's your honor that I'm interested in you." Hearing that, Leng Xiaoting frowned with intense dislike in his eyes because he felt disgusted by Wang Xinyan's words. "This is my man. Stay away from him," Gu Ning threatened, looking at Wang Xinyan coldly. "You!" Wang Xinyan was mad and green with envy. She couldn't accept the fact that this extraordinarily handsome man was Gu Ning's boyfriend. "Get out of our way. It's our dinner time, and I'll beat anyone who stands in my way when I'm hungry," Gu Ning added. She didn't want to waste time arguing with Wang Xinyan. "You!" Wang Xinyan panicked under pressure from Gu Ning. Leng Xiaoting was afraid that Gu Ning was starving, so he gave them a cold glance and said, "Get out of here right now." Hearing that, Wang Xinyan and her friends were all frightened and left right away. There were 2 boys in their early 20s, but they weren't as arrogant as Wang Xinyan. Facing Leng Xiaoting, who had an air of great power, they didn't dare to resist at all. After that, Leng Xiaoting looked to the manager. The manager trembled in fear and stammered, I'll tell the waiter to come in now." Then he walked out without delay. Wang Xinyan didn't realize that she had been driven away until she was outside of the private room. She felt so embarrassed but didn't dare to walk inside and face Leng Xiaoting. "Let's go dine in another restaurant," Wang Xinyan said airily, pretending that she didn't care. "Is she one of the Wang family?" Leng Xiaoting asked Gu Ning, although he already had an affirmative answer himself. "Yes," Gu Ning answered. Leng Xiaoting didn't ask further, but had his own plan. Before long a waiter came inside. Gu Ning's and Leng Xiaoting's appetite weren't affected by what had just happened, and they ordered all the specialties. When the waiter left, Leng Xiaoting took out a box the size of his palm, handing it to Gu Ning. "This is for you." "What?" Gu Ning was confused. "Is this jewelry again?" she thought to herself, but when she opened the box, she was shocked by what was inside. There was a delicate handgun in the box. "Well, the previous one is just a normal gun, and you can't carry it with you, but you can carry this new one. There is firearm license under it, so it's legal," Leng Xiaoting said. Leng Xiaoting didn't know that Gu Ning always put her gun in her telepathic eye space, and no one would find out, but she was still deeply touched by Leng Xiaoting's considerate behavior. Before Gu Ning could finish, Leng Xiaoting interrupted her. "You don't need to thank me." Since Leng Xiaoting said so, Gu Ning didn't continue, but kissed him lightly on his lips. Leng Xiaoting was turned on by Gu Ning's kiss. If they hadn't been in a public place, Leng Xiaoting wouldn't have let her go easily. Although Wang Xinyan felt frightened under the pressure of Leng Xiaoting, she still called someone to help her beat them. Therefore, when Leng Xiaoting and Gu Ning left the restaurant after they finished the meal, they saw that some people were following them. They knew without a doubt that Wang Xinyan must have sent them to get revenge. Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting exchanged a knowing glance and walked ahead as usual. They didn't care about those men behind their backs because they were barely comparable to them. City Tung was a charming ancient town with a beautiful night view and a pleasant bustle. Thus Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting planned to have a tour around, especially on the antique street. They walked towards the underground parking lot, followed by several men. The parking lot was dimly lit and there were few people, thus it was the perfect place for them to attack Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting. The minute that Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting arrived at the parking lot, the men immediately dashed ahead. They surrounded them when they saw that there was no one around. Leng Xiaoting wanted to punch those men, but was stopped by Gu Ning. Gu Ning glanced over the 5 men in her sight and asked slowly, "Did Wang Xinyan send you here?" She already had the answer, but deliberately asked them to collect evidence. A bald man laughed. "Since you know who you've annoyed, you should know that you should have stayed away from the Wang family." "Oh, then what do you want to do next?" Gu Ning asked, but she didn't seem scared at all. "Well, Miss Wang ordered us to rape you first, then cut your face with a knife. As for this man, if you agree to be Miss Wang's boyfriend, you can be safe. Otherwise, you'll be ruined too," the bald man said. Leng Xiaoting was in a rage now, especially when they said that they were going to rape Gu Ning. He couldn't wait and kicked the bald man with great force just as he finished his sentence. The bald man was kicked several meters away and fell onto the ground heavily, moaning in pain. It happened too fast for the other 4 men to react. They actually didn't fight a lot and couldn't kick a man away at all. Thus they were all terrified when Leng Xiaoting did that easily before their eyes. Leng Xiaoting fixed his eyes on them like he was going to kill them all. They were trembling in fear and unconsciously stepped backwards to hide. Even then they couldn't hide from Leng Xiaoting's attack. Within seconds Leng Xiaoting had punched the 4 men down, and they now all groaned with pain on the ground. "Tell Wang Xinyan that if she wants to cause us trouble, she should find some able people. You're merely trash. And tell her to wait for my revenge, because she really annoyed me this time." Gu Ning warned them, then left with Leng Xiaoting. After they were gone, one of those men called Wang Xinyan at once and told her that they failed. Wang Xinyan was mad and snapped at them on the phone. Although Wang Xinyan didn't believe that Gu Ning had the ability to get revenge on her, she felt uneasy to some extent, and her good mood was ruined. Leng Xiaoting looked extremely displeased because of what Wang Xinyan told those men to do to Gu Ning. He would never allow them to do so, But he was annoyed that they had the intention to hurt Gu Ning.
Infine.
Please don't be mad just because of them. Gu Ning didn't want to see Leng Xiaoting being unhappy. They schemed against you, Leng Xiaoting said coldly. He relaxed a little after Gu Ning's comfort, but he was still mad. I'm fine and safe now. They can't hurt me at all. Gu Ning continued to comfort him. I'll handle it, Leng Xiaoting said. No matter who dared to hurt the person that he loved, he would let him or her pay for it. He already had a plan to get revenge on the Wang family. Sure. Gu Ning didn't reject. Otherwise Leng Xiaoting would be upset. Leng Xiaoting was finally cheered up because Gu Ning was willing to let him help her. Feeling Leng Xiaoting's emotional change, Gu Ning didn't know what to say but was touched. The two then ambled on the streets in this ancient town, hand in hand like a normal couple. It was winter, so this ancient town wasn't full of activity like it was in summer, but it was still crowded. A beautiful couple like Leng Xiaoting and Gu Ning soon attracted a lot of attention from people around them, especially when girls noticed Leng Xiaoting. They all marveled at his extraordinarily handsome appearance. Jesus! He's so good-looking. Is he a star or something? I don't think that a star would have a stroll around with his girlfriend. He's so handsome. What a shame that he isn't an actor. Indeed, if he was an actor, he would have a considerable amount of fans. Exactly. I wish that I had such a handsome boyfriend. I think that you should probably be as pretty as the girl beside him first. Hearing all the conversations among those girls, Gu Ning didn't feel uncomfortable at all. Instead, she was proud. Leng Xiaoting didn't like to be the center of people's attention, so he ignored them all. Although antique stands during the night were much less than that during the day, there were still many of them. Gu Ning didn't miss any antique stand on the street, but she didn't walk in the antique shops because she came here to take a chance, not to buy antiques. She enjoyed distinguishing a real antique from fake ones herself. Antiques had been popular for so many years, so there were less real antiques left on the streets. Real antiques were either in antique shops, collected by antique lovers, or placed in museums. Thus Gu Ning didn't find a single real antique after she walked through half of the street. However, when they had almost walked to the end of the street, Gu Ning noticed an antique with power on a stand. It was an 8.5 centimeters tall blue and white glaze bowl, which was worth around 2 million yuan, but Gu Ning only paid 3,000 yuan for it. They didn't go back until 10 p.m., but on their way back, Gu Ning became nervous once she thought of the fact that she was going to stay in the same room as Leng Xiaoting tonight. Before long, they arrived at the hotel. Gaoyi and Xiaoye slept in the factory building tonight, so there were only Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting in this presidential suite now. The minute that they walked inside, Leng Xiaoting locked the door and pressed Gu Ning to him. He kissed her violently, as if he had restricted himself for a long time. Gu Ning was surprised, but she didn't push him away. Instead, she clasped his waist and kissed him back. Leng Xiaoting hadn't seen Gu Ning for days, and now they were finally alone with each other. He couldn't wait to be closer to her. The more passionately Gu Ning kissed him back, the more eagerly Leng Xiaoting wanted her. They slowly moved to the sofa, and he pressed her against the back of the sofa, continuing their kissing. They started to breathe fast, and Leng Xiaoting almost lost his control, but unexpectedly, his phone rang all of a sudden and ruined everything. Leng Xiaoting was mad. Who is calling at this damn time? Gu Ning couldn't help laughing. Answer the phone first. Leng Xiaoting understood that there were only a few people who had his number. It had to be important if they called him. He took out his phone. The caller was Su Jinchen. What? Leng Xiaoting said in obvious anger, which scared Su Jinchen. What's wrong with boss? Why is he so mad? Su Jinchen immediately regretted that he called Leng Xiaoting, because he actually had nothing serious to tell him, but he had already called. If he didn't say anything at all, it would be worse, so he stammered. Well, boss, where are you now? Just tell me what's wrong, Leng Xiaoting said. Nothing. Nothing is wrong. I was just worried about your safety because you're not back yet, Su Jinchen said. Anything else? Leng Xiaoting asked. He almost lost his patience. No, nothing else. Su Jinshan's voice trembled a little in fear. If you don't have anything serious, don't call me again, Leng Xiaoting said icily before he hung up on Su Jinshan. He was a patient person, but now wasn't the right time and he was being tortured by his sexual desire. Su Jinshan was struck dumb. He thought that his boss's reaction was very abnormal today. Siming stepped out of the bathroom. Seeing Su Jinshan standing still with a shocked face by the window, he walked over and bumped him lightly. Hey, what's wrong? I just called our boss, Su Jinshan said. And? Where is he and when will he be coming back? Siming asked.
No idea.
He said that he doesn't want me calling him unless it's serious, Su Jinshan answered. I have a strong feeling that our boss is being very abnormal today. He is easily annoyed. Although Leng Xiaoting always wore a poker face and he was a strict leader, he seldom lost his temper. Therefore, Su Jinshan didn't understand why he suddenly became so easily annoyed. Leng Xiaoting had never been so emotional. Really? Siming was surprised. Leng Xiaoting indeed was abnormal these days. Did you call him and ruin his night with some beautiful girl?
Siming teased.
Su Jinshan didn't take it seriously, because both of them knew that it was impossible. However, what they couldn't believe was exactly the truth. While Leng Xiaoting was talking to Su Jinshan on the phone, Guning walked into her room. Leng Xiaoting hung up the call and followed her, walking in. He hugged Guning from her back, rubbing his head gently across her neck and shoulder. His breath made Guning feel itchy. Xiaoting, can you tell me something about your family? Guning asked. She was suddenly very interested in his family. Although she trusted Leng Xiaoting and didn't care about his background, she wanted to know more about him. If they knew nothing about each other's family, it might end up hurting their relationship. Hearing that, Leng Xiaoting's body stiffened a little. Apparently, he didn't want to talk about it. Guning sensed his unusual reaction and explained at once. It's totally fine if you don't want to talk about it. Guning had a feeling that Leng Xiaoting didn't like his family, so she wouldn't force him. It's fine, Leng Xiaoting said lightly. He understood that Guning just wanted to know more about him. Although he was reluctant to mention them, he was willing to tell Guning. Leng Xiaoting's grandpa, Leng Weihua, was the head of the Leng family. His second uncle, Leng Yuanqian, and his second aunt, Zhang Shuyuan, had a son and a daughter. Their son, Leng Xiaomin, was 25 years old and was half a year younger than Leng Xiaoting and already had a job. Their daughter, Leng Xiaojia, was 23 years old and had just graduated from university half a year ago. His third uncle, Leng Yuanjin, and his third aunt, Yuyin, also had a son and a daughter. Their daughter was Leng Xiaoxi, who was 20 years old and was studying in the capital university as a sophomore. Their son was named Leng Xiaoxuan. He was an 18-year-old senior student in a high school. His youngest aunt, Leng Yuanjin, and his youngest uncle, Song Wenshuan, only had a 13-year-old daughter, who was a student in grade 7 and was called Song Yinhua. When Guning heard Leng Weihua's name, she was astonished. In her previous incarnation, she grew up in the capital and was naturally familiar with those influential names. Guning knew that Leng Xiaoting was from a powerful family, but to her astonishment, his family was much more powerful than she thought. The Leng family was the leader of the 4 most influential families in the capital. Leng Weihua's father was one of the founding fathers of this country, and all the members of the Leng family were in important positions in politics. Leng Xiaoting didn't mention his parents because they had passed away when Leng Xiaoting was only a child. Leng Xiaoting's parents died because of their work, which Guning was also aware of in her previous incarnation. Seeing Guning being so shocked, Leng Xiaoting was worried that she would leave him because of his family. Well, your family is so influential, but I'm just an ordinary girl. Will your family approve of our relationship? Guning deliberately asked. In fact, she didn't care if there were troubles ahead of them, and Leng Xiaoting's attitude mattered most to her. As long as Leng Xiaoting was willing to be with her, she didn't care if his family disagreed. Moreover, Guning believed that she had a bright future, and that she was able to stand by Leng Xiaoting's side. Don't worry. No one can interfere in my personal affairs. As long as I love you, my grandpa won't disagree. And other than my grandpa, we don't need to care about the rest of the Lung family. If they ever annoy you, you can fight back as you like. I'll support you, Lung Xiaoting said. Hearing that, Guning figured out that Lung Xiaoting didn't have a good relationship with the other members in his family, but she was touched that he was willing to stand up for her against them. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? Guning teased. Hearing that, Lung Xiaoting was nervous. He was concerned that Guning would leave him one day. Thus he bent his back and pressed her tightly against his body, looking straight into her eyes. Don't you want to be with me? Did I do anything wrong? Please don't leave me. Seeing Lung Xiaoting being so anxious, Guning felt a little guilty. Yes, of course I want to be with you. You've done nothing wrong. I was just kidding. Guning was regretful that she teased Lung Xiaoting after she found out about his family background. The man lacks security and she should never do that. She blamed herself. After that, Guning kissed Lung Xiaoting's lips to comfort him. Although Guning explained that she was just kidding, Lung Xiaoting was still afraid that she would leave him. Therefore, he kissed her back with great force to feel her existence. The kiss was increasingly passionate and made them want more and more. Gradually, they were controlled by the strong sexual desire that they felt towards each other. They had already taken off their coats when they walked into the room, and now they only had their tight sweaters on. Although Guning was only 18, she had ample breasts. This was the first time that she had even been touched by a man. Her body was trembling slightly in excitement, but she didn't resist because she was prepared. However, at this moment Lung Xiaoting stopped all of a sudden. He tried his best to get his reason back. Ning, He was afraid that he would hurt Guning, but he wanted her so much right now. Shouting, I want you as well. Although Guning was also turned on, she knew what she was saying and doing. Having Guning's affirmative answer, Lung Xiaoting lost all of his reason. He thrust inside her body like a hungry beast that had finally caught its prey. Guning wanted to moan in pain, but restricted herself. This was her first time, and she knew that it could be painful, so she had been mentally prepared. Lung Xiaoting understood that Guning could be hurt, so he moved slowly once he was inside of her. As time went by, it got more and more comfortable for her. They had been doing it for a long time and Guning started to feel tired. She had to admit that Lung Xiaoting had incredible stamina. Isn't he tired at all? After they finished, it was 3 a.m. in the morning, and they lay cuddled together as they went to sleep. When Guning woke up, Lung Xiaoting was absent from the bed. It was quiet, but Guning knew that Lung Xiaoting was still here. She secretly used her jade eyes and found that Lung Xiaoting was cooking. What they had done throughout last night flashed through her mind, and Guning flushed with happiness, but she was slightly mad too. She hadn't understood what a wolf in sheep's clothing was until now. Lung Xiaoting looked like he practiced self-restraint normally, but immediately turned out to be a hungry wolf in bed. If she hadn't had the power to protect herself, she probably would have fainted. Checking the marks left by Lung Xiaoting on her body, Guning flushed again. Although she could use her power to remove those marks, she didn't do so because they were signs of their love. It was winter, so she could easily hide it with clothes. Guning got up and went to have a shower. She changed her clothing before leaving the bedroom. Lung Xiaoting had already prepared breakfast when Guning came out. Watching Guning, he flushed a little too, because they had spent a whole night making love. And it was also his first time. Good morning, Lung Xiaoting said, pulling a chair out for Guning. Good morning. Guning felt too shy to look straight into his eyes, so she directly walked to the dining table. The two then sat across the dining table having their breakfast together. No one said a word, but Lung Xiaoting's gaze fell on Guning once in a while. He was searching for something. Guning felt slightly uncomfortable and asked, "What are you looking for?" Lung Xiaoting felt that it was embarrassing to say it out loud, but after a few seconds he still asked with care, "Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" Lung Xiaoting didn't know that Guning had her power to protect herself, and he understood that it could be painful during the first time. Guning blushed once more. Although they had already slept with each other, she felt shy to bring it up. I am a little tired and it's just a little painful. In fact, she had used her power to relieve the pain, and felt much better now. Hearing that, Leng Xiaoting felt a little guilty and apologized. Sorry, I just couldn't stop last night. Then you can restrain yourself the next time. Gu Ning planned to comfort Leng Xiaoting, but once she said it out loud, it sounded like she was looking forward to the next time. Sure, I will, Leng Xiaoting said. Even if Gu Ning didn't say it, he would be more careful the next time. Gu Ning remained silent, eating her breakfast. At this time, Leng Xiaoting received Su Jinshan's call. After Leng Xiaoting's warning, Su Jinshan now only called his boss when he had something serious. It was about the task they were going to fulfill this time, so Leng Xiaoting left after he hung up. However, before he left, he reminded Gu Ning to take care, because he couldn't stop her from going out. Once she went out, he would be worried about her safety in City Tung. When Leng Xiaoting was gone, Gu Ning called the owner of the factory building. They were going to finish the legal procedure today. It was already 9 a.m., and they should finish it in the morning. Gu Ning and the owner agreed to meet at the real estate bureau, and it only took them half an hour to finish the legal procedure. Afterwards, Gu Ning called Zheng Peng. They planned to acquire raw materials from the Wang family later. Zheng Peng was waiting for Gu Ning's call, and was ready to set out at any time. Thus Gu Ning took a taxi heading to the street of stone gambling without delay. On the way, Gu Ning received Leng Xiaoting's call. He told her that the registration would be settled this afternoon. Gu Ning was astonished by his efficiency, but thinking of Leng Xiaoting's background, Gu Ning believed that he could make it happen. Zheng Peng's store was being redecorated when Gu Ning arrived. His store wasn't very big, so it wouldn't take much time. They only lacked a counter, sofa, desks and other furniture now. They would change the store board when that furniture was delivered here. For now, Zheng Peng only needed to go buy raw materials with Gu Ning. The Wang family's raw material warehouse wasn't far away from the street of stone gambling, and they arrived after only 4 minutes of driving. It was a 3,400 square meter factory area with 3 buildings. It wasn't large but was built by the Wang family, so they owned it. Except for raw materials, the Wang family was also involved in jewelry, clothing, electronic equipment and so forth. Their manufacturing factories were all in this area. The raw material warehouse was in the underground room of Building A. It was about 7 square meters in size and consisted of 4 small areas, A, B, C and D. The price of raw materials varied from small area to small area. Although all of the raw materials had been selected and classified, it didn't mean that there were only low-quality raw materials in a low-price area. Purchasers could choose raw materials one by one, but those raw materials were all piled up, so it was difficult for them to pick the bottom ones. In that case, most people could only get the raw materials on the top. However, Gu Ning was different. She already had bad blood with the Wang family. Thus she wouldn't miss any raw material with jade inside. There were around 10,000 raw materials in each pile, but only over 100 of them contained jade, and most of the jade was of low quality. This time, Gu Ning planned to buy all the raw materials with jade above medium level. She let Zheng Peng push the cart while she was choosing the raw materials. Gu Ning picked raw materials at a high speed. It seemed like she didn't pick at all, but those workers in the factory didn't say anything even though Gu Ning turned raw materials all over. They didn't believe that she could cut out jade. Zheng Peng had mixed emotions. Although Gu Ning told him that she had special skills of stone gambling, he couldn't help doubting the possibility that she was able to cut out jade. Most importantly, Gu Ning was going to run a raw material provider. They had to cut out a large amount of jade. Nevertheless, Zheng Peng didn't say anything because Gu Ning was his boss. Within 2 hours, Gu Ning took out all the raw materials with jade above medium level. She got over 1,300 raw materials in all, 20 of which contained top-level jade, 70 had high-level jade, around 300 contained medium-high-level jade, over 400 had medium-level jade and the rest all contained medium-low-level jade. The aggregate price of the raw materials wasn't very high because they bought them directly from the factory. In addition, they needed 2 medium-sized trucks to deliver all of the raw materials. There were many trucks in the Wang family's factory, and it was free to deliver goods within Citytung. When they were back at their own factory building, Guning called Gao Yi and Xiaoya to help them move raw materials. Gao Yi and Xiaoya were both shocked when they saw the 2 trucks which were filled with raw materials. Zhang Peng, meanwhile, rounded his eyes in shock at seeing the factory building. "Boss, did you rent this whole building? It's too large." Zhang Peng knew that normally businessmen would rent a whole building for convenience, but it was enough for them to cut out raw materials even if they only rented a big room. "I didn't rent it. I bought it," Guning said. "What? You bought it?" Zhang Peng was astonished. To his surprise, Guning was rich enough to buy the whole building. Afterwards, they put all the raw materials into the underground space. There were 4 warehouses on the basement floor. 3 of them were small warehouses, occupying around 100 square meters, and all in each of them was around 30 square meters, while the number 1 warehouse was 300 square meters in size. Guning told them to place all the raw materials into the number 4 warehouse. While they were moving raw materials, Guning secretly put raw materials which contained jade with strong power into her telepathic eye space, and replaced them with other raw materials, but she still left several raw materials with top-level jade outside. At the same time, there were only raw materials with high-level and top-level jade in her telepathic eye space. After they moved all the raw materials into the warehouse, Guning introduced them to each other before they went to dine together. During the meal, Zhang Peng finally asked Guning, "Boss, are you sure that there's a large amount of jade inside those raw materials?"
Guning smiled.
She understood that Zhang Peng had been confused for a long time. "We'll find out when we cut them." Although Guning herself was certain, she preferred to let them see the results with their own eyes. Since Guning said so, Zhang Peng didn't ask further. After the meal, Zhang Peng went back to continue redecorating his store. Guning instead called Zhang Deqing and told him that she was busy acquiring raw materials. She just got a large amount of raw materials from the Wang family, and she immediately called the Zhang family. In fact, she was in a hurry, but she didn't know how long she would be staying in Citytung, so she wanted to settle it as soon as possible. Zhang Deqing had already retired and handed the family business to his son, so he was always free now. He told Guning the address of their warehouses and went to meet her at once. After that, Guning left along with Gao Yi and Xiaoya. The Zhang family's warehouse wasn't far from the street of stone gambling either, but it was in the opposite direction of the Wang family's warehouse. The Zhang family's warehouses were also in a separate building like the Wang family's, but it was a little smaller. They had 3 buildings too, 2 of which were factories, while the last one was a staff dormitory. When Guning arrived, Master Zhang was already waiting outside of the factory. Seeing Guning, Zhang Deqing immediately got out of his car and welcomed her. "So nice to meet you, Miss Gu." "Master Zhang, I'm so sorry to make you wait," Guning apologized. "It's fine. I just arrived as well. Let's go in now," Zhang Deqing said, then guided Guning and others walking inside. With Zhang Deqing as their guide, they didn't need to register, and walked in without any trouble. The Zhang family's raw materials were also divided into 4 classes, A, B, C, and D. However, Guning didn't plan to do the same thing as what she had done in the Wang family's warehouses, because she intentionally got revenge on the Wang family. As for the Zhang family, Guning wouldn't take away all the raw materials with jade. She decided to take half of the raw materials which contained jade above medium level. In the end, Guning took over 400 raw materials in all, among which only 300 raw materials contained jade. There were around 20 raw materials with top-level jade, 40 with high-level jade, 60 with medium-high-level jade, and all the rest were raw materials with medium-level jade. All of them cost Guning 30 million yuan, and Zhang Deqing gave Guning a discount. Guning's group then went back to their warehouse. When they moved the raw materials into their factory building, Guning didn't dump the waste raw materials because it would be so abnormal if there was no waste at all in her raw materials.